Wonderful. Well, welcome everyone to the March 28th, 2024 meeting of the California Board of Naturopathic Medicine. It is 10:21 a.m. Thank you for everyone's patience. We're going to call our meeting to order, and I'm going to have Rebecca. Okay, Dr. Wilson, present. Dr. Mina.
This is the moderator. We lost audio on you at the beginning of roll call.
Oh, no. Okay, I can retake it. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you okay.
All right, perfect. I'm going to retake roll call. Dr. Dara Thompson. Present. Dr. Mina Yoon. Present. Dr. Vera Singleton. Present. Dr. Sitara Tice. Here. Dr. Deparshi Mukherjee.
Present.
Mr. Andy Yam.
Present.
And Dr. Bruce Davidson.
Present.
Wonderful. We have a quorum. Great. At this point, I would like to move on to agenda item number 2, which is public comment of items not on the agenda. Do we have any public members present? Moderator, if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
This is the moderator. I heard you call for public comment in the room. Are you ready for public comment via WebEx?
Yes, please. Yes, thank you.
All right. We are open for public comment via WebEx. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise that hand by tapping the hand button at the bottom of your screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand. And for our mobile device users, you may need to hit the ellipses button, the ... at the bottom in order to find the appropriate screen with a hand button. You have 3 different screens and only one of them has that hand button. For today's meeting, people will be given 3 minutes to speak, and I'll give you a 30-second warning before your time expires. We're going to wait just a couple seconds to see if we have a request for public comment, and then we're going to move forward. Seeing no request for public comment, would you like to continue with the agenda?
Yes, thank you. At this time, we're going to jump all the way to agenda item number 13. And welcome our representative from the American Association of Naturopathic Physicians, who's going to be presenting to us on their ethics code. Welcome. I believe we have Todd Robinson and Lynn Wheeling.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, thanks for having us.
So,
thank you for being here.
Great. Do you have the presentation or? There we go. I'm going to tee it up for Dr. Robinson, who is the task force chair for the House of Delegates Code of Ethics Task Force. The AANP, as you know, publishes and presents the professional code of ethics for the naturopathic doctor profession. We have been, the House of Delegates has taken it on to actually review and update. We have a task force of naturopathic doctors led at the helm with Dr. Robinson, who is also the president of the Florida Naturopathic Physician Association, an AANP affiliate. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Robinson.
Thank you, Lynn. So the task force has been working on updating the AANP's Code of Ethics. This is a necessary procedural task for any professional medical organization. But beyond that, it represents a chance for the naturopathic community to express with a unified voice what it is that we value medically from an ethical standpoint. And so the task force has approach to this project with that in mind, that we're not just trying to check the appropriate boxes, but we're trying to create a code of ethics and update the current code of ethics in a way that represents the profession as a whole across this country. And so if you can, and we've got some great people who are members of the task force, if you can click to the next slide, we'll give an overview of kind of what the process has been. So this is how we approached updating the Code of Ethics. Of course, we first reviewed the AA&P's current Code of Ethics, but we also cast a wider net and looked at the Code of Ethics from 9 other professional organizations, looked at strengths and weaknesses of those while recognizing that the naturopathic profession is pretty unique. We sit in a pretty unique place between what might be called lay professionals and advanced medical professionals. And our philosophy is also very, very unique. And so we tackled this in a way that tried to embody and capture the professionalism that we've seen in these other organizations while still reflecting what is unique and important about the naturopathic profession. So we did opt to use the pillars of medical ethics that are common across most formal versions of ethics from all of these professional organizations. And you can see those 4 pillars there at the bottom. And the challenge, the ongoing challenge, is to take those 4 pillars and try and understand what they mean from a naturopathic perspective. And so that is what the current draft language of the Code of Ethics reflects, is the task force understanding of what these common principles mean from the unique lens of the naturopathic doctor. And if you can move to the next slide. One of the tasks in terms of updating the current Code of Ethics is that we realized quickly that the Code of Ethics as written is currently more of a prescriptive document, meaning it gives much more details about what to do, what not to do, that kind of thing, in very minute detail, which is different from a Code of Ethics. It's more of a code of conduct. And so we took it upon ourselves to create what is much more of an aspirational document as opposed to a prescriptive one, meaning the language is more generalized, and the hope is to capture the spirit of what most naturopathic doctors would be considered ethical practice of naturopathic medicine. So the committee has been working for well over 12 months. We have a draft that we are currently in first phase of the review process. So we have subject matter experts who are currently reviewing the language and offering what thus far has been I think, very helpful feedback. And so when the committee meets again, we'll integrate that feedback into a new version of the draft that will then move into phase 2, which would be stakeholder review outside of the committee. And then phase 3, of course, would be considering all that feedback and then offering a final draft, which will be open to the entire process of approval, which Lynn knows more about than I do. So I guess at that point, I'll stop talking and ask if anyone has any questions or if Lynn has anything to add.
I think it's important that we look at you, California Regulatory Board, as a subject matter expert, because the Code of Ethics is a document that in many regulated states is referred to in statute. So we want to make sure that the product that we put forth for adoption is going to meet the needs for regulators in their ability to adjudicate anything that comes across as an ethical question. We believe that we have approached this in a manner which would suffice that, but we are looking to you to provide us with that feedback. So you have received, I did send out both the current code of ethics and then the draft code of ethics. And when we do open up the comments, the link is in this, is open now. We just haven't finalized it. But that is how we're going to start to collect feedback. And this is not a timed process. We really want to make sure that we have gone as broad as possible and gotten as much feedback as possible to ensure that what we put forth for the profession is a code of ethics that can certainly be utilized, understood, and adopted for the profession. So with that, I just wanted to kind of wrap that around, that we are looking to you as one of our subject matter experts, not one, but many subject matter experts, in providing us that kind of feedback. Hence why we're here today.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. And Rebecca did send all of those out ahead of time. So I want to open up to the room and see if anyone has specific questions about the documents that we received. We do understand that we have time after this meeting to provide you with comments as individuals, and that will allow us to give more time. But while we have you here, does anyone have specific questions for these experts? Dr. Davidson?
Thank you. Thank you very much for your overview presentation. I found it very helpful to understand that you were making a distinction between a code of ethics and a code of conduct. And you made reference to the idea that the prior code of ethics, in its specificity and detail, was more like the code of conduct. So I wanted to ask whether the organization also has a code of conduct that will be available to pick up some of the specificity and detail in the current code of ethics if the move is made to the proposed new one.
I'm not sure if Dr. Robinson's still with us, but if I'll take the opportunity to speak to that. The answer to that question is yes. We will be taking some of the more specifics of the current code of ethics that are more prescriptive and putting those into a supplemental code of conduct that will be a companion document to the code of ethics.
Great, thank you.
You're so very welcome.
And how long is this link for review and comments available to us?
I would like to say that it is going to be available for at least the foreseeable 6 months, if not longer. And the reason being is that we want to make sure that we have given all of our stakeholders an ample time to review, kind of consider, and then provide feedback, and then take that feedback, update the draft, and then put out another exposure draft so that, again, it is a product that can be consumed and utilized by the practitioners, by the professionals that need to have this information. We thought we were going to be able to do it by July of this year, but we are realizing that this is one of those high-touch change projects that requires a lot more communication, a lot more dialogue around it so that everybody feels their voices are heard and are reflected into the final product.
Absolutely. I definitely, having worked on this sort of written document that has so much input, you don't even realize the things you may have said that could be taken another way until many, many people read it and get feedback, and then someone has to read the new draft. So we understand. Thank you for looping us in on this and allowing us to participate.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Dr. Singleton has a question.
I just wanted to be clear, how would we go about submitting comments or?
There's a link up here. Where do we have access to that link electronically?
I will send you guys out the actual draft that has the link, the active link.
And there will be multiple communications with that link in it that will be sent out to all of our stakeholders, again, multiple times. And you are more than, we've opened this up so that if you want to provide comment and then come back and provide more comment, it is that type of a living document that we are creating with this form.
Wonderful, thank you. Do we have any other questions from the board members at this time? I'm sure we'll all want to spend some time with the document and really review it in detail.
Well, thank you so very much for your time. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here. We'll let you get back to your important business.
Okay.
We really appreciate your time.
So much.
Yeah, we are going to ask for public comment at this time. What was that?
Ask for public comment in the room.
Yes, I apologize. You said there being public members in there. First, is there any public comment at this time in the room? All right, seeing none, moderator, can we open to public comment from people online?
Absolutely. We are now open for public comment via WebEx on agenda item 13. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise that hand by tapping the hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, please. At this point, we are going to move on. I apologize for jumping around, but it's just to make things the most expeditious. We're going to move on to agenda item number 7, and we're going to welcome Christy Shields. Thank you. Here to do a presentation for us on the rulemaking process and the overview around that.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Christy Shields, Regulations Counsel for the board. It's nice to see all of you in person. I know we've had communications and chats online, and this will be our first opportunity to meet in person. So nice to see all of you today. I hope everyone can hear me online. If we could go to the first slide, please.
This is the moderator. We have slides for agenda items 13 and 14. Perhaps do you have something on your computer that you can share?
I do have something that I submitted. It's in the meeting materials online for the board meeting. I thought that it had been given to Solid. Sorry.
Hold on just a moment. Let's see if we can get an upload for you.
Thank you. So while he's doing that, I'll just give you my introduction, which is I've been with the department since 2000. Prior to coming here, I worked in private sector in litigation and as a corporate counsel. I came here in 2000 where I worked in various capacities, including as a board counsel and litigation counsel for many of the agencies in the department. I currently am regulations counsel, and I'm assigned as what I call a second level reviewer for the other attorneys in the office. I help review their work for the other agencies in the department, and I also have 9 primary clients, including this one for which I do regulations work. But I also do backup and coverage counsel for other board counsel in the office when they are on vacation and have other conflicts. Today, we're going to be discussing the process of adopting regulations through a regular rulemaking. There's emergency procedures as well, but we're not going to go into that because regular rulemaking is the most common rulemaking you're going to see with this board. And it's going to cover the requirements for the California Administrative Procedure Act, which is the APA, they call it, which is what we use to determine whether your regulations comply with the law, and what the Office of Administrative Law, which is the agency that approves regulations for state agencies, would use to determine whether your regulations meet the requirements for the California Administrative Procedure Act. So that's kind of the overview of what we're going to talk about. David, were you able to upload the content? Yay! Good job. Thank you. So if we could go, if you can go to the next slide. We already did that, so let's go to the one after that. Great. So in this slide, we're talking about the fact that regulations have the force of law, and so accordingly, state agencies have to follow the process outlined in the California Administrative Procedure Act, and to ensure due process to those affected by the regulations proposed to be adopted, amended, or repealed. The board's regulations are in Division 40 of the Title 16 of the California Code of Regulations. And if we could go to the next slide, please. We're going to start off with the baseline is how a regulation is defined in the Administrative Procedure Act. And as you can see here, it's a requirement that is used to implement, interpret, or make specific the law enforced or administered by the board, or to govern the board's procedures. So if we go to the next slide. Regulations are necessary according to the Administrative Procedure Act when the legislation or the law that you're implementing is not self-executing, meaning it's not self-explanatory. If you can look at it and see that it's capable of more than one interpretation, then it's going to need a regulation to implement, interpret, or make specific that law. Next slide, please. So an example of what I mean by that is we have a law on the left that says the application fee shall be no more than $500 and may be increased to not more than $600. So when you're looking at legislation that's going through, whenever you see words like sufficient, adequate, reasonable, satisfactory, may, right? These are things that are capable of more than one interpretation, and it's going to be a clue to you that you're going to need a regulation to make that statute clearer so that whoever looks at it will have the same interpretation that you do of the law. It cannot be vague. In statutes with some constitutional limitation, they can be somewhat vague as to what they mean and then delegate to you the authority to further clarify and specify what those requirements are. Like it'll say that you have to file an application with the board that's satisfactory to the board. You know, what does that mean? What do you require on the application? So you're going to need a regulation to say that. So when you're looking at legislation that goes through, I think from a policy perspective, you're going to want to think about, do we want the statute to be clearer so we don't need to do a regulation, or do we want the authority to further clarify and set in regulation what we think the standards should be and then modify them as they evolve and change over time? So this is kind of what you're doing with your IV therapy regulations. They're not real clear as to what administration requirements should be for minimum standards, so you're developing regulations to make that clearer. In this case, we have a fee situation where, you know, you have to decide, you know, it may be increased to not more than $600. So what does that mean? Is the fee $500? Is it $600? Is it somewhere in between? So as you'll see in our agenda item 8, we're going to be talking about what that fee should be based upon data the board has collected to support its decision. The staff, I should say, have collected to help support the board's decision-making in that area. You go into the next slide, please. So here we have kind of like a broad-based overview of the board's role in the rulemaking process. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on each one of these boxes because we're going to go into more in-depth later, but with the flow chart, you'll see there's 4 main phases. The first is the concept phase, where we identify that we need a regulation. and that can come to you by a number of sources. And then the regulation, once it's identified, can be referred to a committee of the board or to staff or legal counsel to help further develop the specificity you need to withstand review. And then it's brought to a board meeting, the board would approve it, and it goes to production phase. And the production phase is where the staff put the documents that support the regulation together and file them with the Office of Administrative Law. The initial phase, the approved language is posted and noticed to the public, and there's a 45-day comment period. In that time, there's also potentially a hearing if requested, and then we get potentially comments on the regulations. They'll be brought back to you at a board meeting, and you'll decide whether to accept or reject those comments or make further changes and finalize the text. And if there's changes, we'll do a 15-day notice. If not, staff will finalize the text and submit it to the Office of Administrative Law. And if you have any questions as I'm talking, feel free to raise your hand and interject. Next slide, please. Okay, go ahead.
So it says may hold hearing.
Oh, wait, can we go back, David, to that slide? Sorry. Sorry, David. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a quick question on the may hold a hearing during the 45-day comment period. How is that a request that's made by a single board member, or does that require some sort of board motion?
So the default motion for most boards is that we don't set a hearing unless requested, but you can decide that you would like to set a hearing at the outset and direct the staff to set a hearing as part of the rulemaking process, but it would need to be in the motion.
Okay, so it would need to be during a board meeting.
Yes.
The board meeting, which.
But a member of the public, even if you say we're not going to have a hearing, they could say during, leading up to the 45-day, I think at least 15 days before the close of the public comment period, a member of the public that got like an email saying you're doing a rulemaking could say, I would like a hearing. And you would have to have a hearing at that point because the public asked for one. So it can either come from the board, or if the board says, this is not a controversial issue, I don't think we want to hold a hearing, then we wait to see if someone asks from the public says, I really want to have a hearing, then they can ask for one and we would set it at that point.
Right, and I just asked that question just because in between we meet quarterly, right? I mean, would be let's say there was a language that was proposed and a draft sort of regulation has already been submitted to the board. At what point would we be able to say, we just email the chair and the executive officer and saying, like to have a hearing, and then
so when the board's approving the text in the initial phase, you would actually say whether you want to set a hearing or not at that point. So that's your decision point to decide whether this topic you think is worthy of a hearing. Whether we get anybody to show up at the hearing is kind of a question. So you kind of have to think about the topic and think whether you think you're going to get public attendance, because it is time consuming for the staff to set a hearing if nobody shows up. And I've had that happen. We sat there for 25 minutes waiting for someone to show up and then just said, for the record, no one's here. It's, so-and-so half an hour since the notice time and there's no one here and we're closing the hearing. So
preemptively then.
You have to decide up front. And then if you say at the beginning, we don't, are not going to set a hearing unless requested, then it would be on the incumbent on the public, if they're interested, to then ask for it. And we are required by law to send notice of the rulemaking to interested parties, people who have signed up and said they want your email notices, and a representative sampling of the regulated community and businesses that are affected by the regulation. So they would decide if they want to have a hearing or just submit written comments. And most people do just submit written comments unless it's a really controversial issue and they want to have a hearing and debate in public.
And I was asking just because when I was reading through this, I saw like addresses all adverse comments received. I wonder, because we would
that has to be brought back to the board. If you get an adverse comment, it's required for us to bring it back to you to decide how you want to handle it. You're not allowed to delegate to your EO that authority. That's your decision by law to make. So if we got only like, this is a great reg, I love it, you're not going to get it back because it's consistent with your policy decision. But if they say, I don't understand this reg, I have a problem with it, I'm not sure how it impacts me, I think it's a bad decision, anything like that, that's going to come back. Even things like I think you're all terrible. It's still adverse, so it's coming back. Sorry. So then you're going to make a policy decision whether you want to accept the comment and the suggestions they're making or reject them, and we have to take a formal vote on that at a meeting. So you'll see that as it comes, because at some point, I think, you know, there will be comments and you'll see how that's handled, but that's how it would come back to you. You would say yes, no to the comment, then you'd say yes, no to the text, make any changes you'd like. And if you make any changes, we'd send it out for 15-day notice and go through this process again where we have public comments. If you have public comments on the 15-day notice, then those two would come back. So I've had some rulemakings that took almost a year because they got like successive comments over and over out. Yes.
Triggered the 15 days.
Yes. And then we have to do it again. And the board's like, yeah, we should change that. So then it goes out again. And so it goes and goes until you decide, no, we're good with this version. And then we move from there to you authorizing the staff to do the kind of the technical filings and compilation of the rulemaking package and moving it from review agency to review agency. And there's a lot of review, as you'll see, that happens. And that's why it takes so long to get rules done. But the idea behind that is there's so many layers of review to protect, you know, the integrity of the process and make sure that people have, you know, review to make sure it's you know, legally defensible from an economic, a fiscal perspective, or a legal perspective. And that's why there's all these different layers. The idea is there's all these different layers of review to make sure that we have a defensible rule. So, yes.
Are you doing one reg at a time, or can you stack a bunch of regulations?
But you can have a large, I've had up to 50 regulations in one rulemaking package. I've had, you know, one. It just depends on what you think you can do and accomplish effectively at a time. And sometimes if you have a regulation you're revising, it could affect other regulations. We're going to attach those in the rulemaking package so you can handle all the policy decisions at once. Okay. Any other questions from the board members? Okay. On to the next slide.
Christy, I'm sorry. I'm come behind you and switch to listen to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just don't want to like tell you what I'm doing.
Okay. So again, we have 4 phases that we consider in the rulemaking process. Concept is where the problem is defined in proposed text developed by the board. Production is where all the regulatory text after you voted to approve it and supporting documentation is prepared and compiled for review by the Office of Administrative Law. The initial phase is where the formal adoption process begins by filing the proposed text in rulemaking documents with OAL for publication, and the 45-day public comment period begins, and possibly one or more hearings or public comment periods occurs. And final, where the board responds to comments received during the comment period, decides whether to modify the text, and then acts at a board meeting to approve final text. Once text is approved, staff finalizes the documentation and submits it to OAL. So we kind of talked about that already, but next slide, please. So concept, we'll start with the concept phase and get a little more of a deep dive there. I would say the concept phase is the hardest part of rulemaking because it's where you're trying to decide what your policy is going to be. There's a lot of you know, defining the objectives you hope to achieve, brainstorming solutions. If it's a complicated or a large proposal, which sometimes will be cost in excess of $10 million by law, it's called a major regulation, and you have to have stakeholder meetings before you begin the rulemaking process. But I recommend it in general if you have a real a public interest in the topic, because I think getting stakeholder input and feedback before you file is a good way to avoid any adverse comments during the rulemaking process, and also shows that you engaged stakeholders before you made any policy decisions, and it's in the record. So if anyone ever came at you from a litigation perspective, you could say we engaged all these people and we formed a rational conclusion based on all that input and came up with what we think was a well-balanced rule. So it's important to have these discussions and reviews, because These are the things that the Office of Administrative Law will examine when they're looking at the policy decisions you made in the text that you've drafted. And the more work you put in, I think, at this stage, the easier the rest of the process becomes. If you kind of just throw things together without really working the concept, you'll find problems with it as you proceed through the comment period and other things, and then you'll have to take it back, and then it takes longer. So take your time if you can. Sometimes there's no choice about it, and really think, considerably about what you're doing and the impacts it has on people, because that are the things you're going to have to defend when other people come at you to attack any rule that you adopt. So anyway, go ahead.
So that cost limit that you're talking about, is that the cost of implementing the change or the fiscal impact it's going to have?
So the $10 million for major regulations, that's the economic impact to the regulated community. So like the California Privacy Protection Agency is one of the ones I know that adopted one, and they adopted one where you've probably seen it as a consumer, where they required every business in the state of California to put in opt-in or out requirements and allow you to choose how you want to share your personal information when you're on a website. And that was a $10 million regulation because of all the industries that it was impacting. And so they had a long startup process for that proposal because they had to do a lot of stakeholder outreach. And so we don't see many of those in this department. The last one I think that I looked at was for the Bureau of Cannabis Control, which is not in our department anymore, but yeah, they have a $10 million industry. Anything they do would have a huge fiscal impact to that industry. So, but I haven't seen a lot of those. But still, I have found when there are contentious issues, and you know what those are for your industry, engaging stakeholders is really important. Showing that you've taken the input in, you've processed it, you've made decisions after getting that feedback can really help avoid problems down the road and a smoother process for rules. So, welcome. Any other questions? Okay, next slide, please. So for concept development, I'm gonna walk you through the process for developing concepts. Again, the concepts can originate from statute, because sometimes a statute will say you shall do regulations on this issue. Board staff, your regulated public, can come to you at a board meeting and say, we think this is a great idea for a rule. I think there was discussion today about ethics, code of ethics, those things. Industry groups, people who may interact with the regulated public, and from you as board members based on your knowledge and experience. So the process starts usually with the board's president in consultation with the executive officer placing a concept on the board's agenda for discussion and possible action. The board staff will work with Regulations Council to develop the concepts for regulatory proposals and bring these to a board meeting for discussion. But if the proposal involves complicated or technical subject matter, the board may use a variety of methods, which you just discussed, to develop the text, including establishing a standing or advisory committee, which we have done for the IV therapy administration regulations. We have a 2-person working group, and those are not subject to the Open Meeting Act, so we can meet frequently to discuss policy and data and develop that information to bring back to you and discuss at a board meeting. So establishing 2-person advisory committees is a common way for the boards in this department to have a lot of meetings without requiring the full board to attend. But of course, any recommendations they make would have to be brought back to a full board meeting for you to discuss and deliberate on. Your role in the regulatory process includes suggestions as to concepts that should be in regulation or referral to committee, and provide suggested changes to the text at the board meeting or any other noticed meeting. The board may also decide whether to conduct formal stakeholder meetings, or you have a board meeting that's just a stakeholder meeting. I've seen that when it's a contentious issue, and we spend the entire meeting talking about that subject so that you can get all the issues addressed in one meeting with the affected stakeholders. Or you can have more informal working groups like we have had for the advisory committee for IV therapy administration. This is important because the APA requires the rulemaking body to include in the rulemaking all factual information that the agency relied on in adopting the regulations. Next slide, please. So once the draft is ready, the proposed text is brought to you in a document entitled Proposed Language, and you'll see that in our agenda item 8 material. And it's shown in underline for additions and strike through for deletions. So anything that's not struck out or underlined in text is what your current policy looks like. So, but anything that's underlined is new, and then struck out as existing proposal to be removed from your regulations. You can see examples on the board's regulations page of its website where we were required to post all rulemaking documents for initiation and final. That document is provided along with a cover memo to the board explaining the problem and describing how the staff's proposal would address the problem and suggesting possible motions. So you'll see that in the meeting materials we have for agenda item 8 today. Of course, we don't tell you what motions you can make, but we give you suggestions for options considering what you're thinking in terms of rulemaking, whether you agree with the proposal or not. And you'll see that in the meeting materials where we just discussed with Mr. Yam here, the fact that you can delegate to your EO the production piece of the rulemaking file, which would be preparing the documents to support your arguments for why the rule should be adopted, and giving her the authority to set the matter for a public hearing if requested or not, and the authority to make non-substantive or technical corrections. And so these would be things like typos, which we may have missed, relettering problems, grammar and punctuation, that kind of thing. And we don't want to have to bring that back to you for approval, so you delegate to her the ability to make those corrections if they happen. Now, once all that's done and the package is done, then your executive officer, can you go to the next slide, please? Sorry. Oh, there's one missing. Okay. Well, there should be a flow chart that says rulemaking package review process. I'm not sure where that is.
Oh, it's on 13.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so the review process would be after the package is done and it's been produced and approved by your executive officer, to move, it goes to the legal office, which would be me, and maybe my manager if she's so inclined to review. And if we approve it, then it would move to, or it may be reviewed at the same time as the budget office. So although, you know, the legal office handles the legal aspects of the file, there's still a fiscal and economic impact statement that has to accompany the rulemaking package. And that is a Form 399, where it discusses what you believe are going to be the fiscal and economic impacts, the economic impacts to the industry and the fiscal impacts to your board of implementing that rule. And so budget office has to approve it before it goes to the director. So those are your first two levels of review that you have to get through. So by the time it gets to the director, one or two attorneys have looked at it, budget analysts and the budget office have reviewed and approved it. Then it goes to the director, who you may or may not know has been an executive director of the medical board for many years. So she's very familiar with regulations, and so is a little more of a, how should we say, a critical eye for rules, and will ask a lot of questions. And so we need to have our ducks in a row, so to speak, when we get to her, because she will catch things that we may have missed, and in which case we would have to bring it back to you if there's a problem. If she approves it, then it goes to the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency, and that's by Department of Finance regulation. It's required that it be reviewed by the cabinet level agency over this department, which is this Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency. And they look at the fiscal and economic impacts, but let's be real, they look at everything. And we will get questions from them about implementation and defensibility, and that is an attorney that looks at that. General counsel for agency usually reviews the regulation. So by then you're maybe at your third attorney looking at it. And so if there's a problem there, again, we'd bring it back to you for review and discussion. But we do try to resolve things, of course, at these levels without having to bring it back to you. If there is a fiscal and economic impact, the California Department, and they don't always have one, fees obviously would have an economic impact. So that will have a review by the Department of Finance. They review and approve it, and they have to approve it, or the Office of Administrative Law will automatically disapprove your regulation. The requirement that that 399 be approved by the Department of Finance, or your rule is dead. So we've had a couple of those happen in the history of the department, but not typically. Normally, we've done our homework. The budget office is really well prepared to defend your regulation by the time it gets to this point. Then it's filed with the Office of Administrative Law for notice. And 3 attorneys there review your regulation and decide whether it meets all the standards, which we're going to talk about shortly, for adopting a regulation. So, like I said, so by the time it gets to that point, 5 to 6 attorneys have looked at it. And you know we always agree on everything, so it's always a simple, no problem. This looks good.
Is it an approximate timeline?
It takes, we get a year to finish it. The fastest I've ever gotten a reg through is probably 5 months, 6 months, because the director's given 30 days and the Consumer Services Agency's given 30 days. 30 to 45 is kind of what they've been doing. So we're looking at the front end, that's the time frame, but then they get to review it again on the back end. So we have about 90 days is spent in Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency. The director's pretty quick, though. She's like, I would say 2 to 4 weeks total for her whole review for the whole process, front and back end. And that review is required by law under Business and Professions Code Section 313.1. All regulations except for regulations relating to licensing and examinations has to be approved by the director. You can override a disapproval, though, by unanimous vote of the board. So there is an out if there's a disapproval. That doesn't happen really too often that I've seen. So any questions on this process here? But this is just to get it filed. Just to get it filed. So now you know why it takes a long time. Any questions? Okay, next slide, please. So here we have the initiation of the rulemaking. So we're at the initial stage. The board has delegated staff the authority to file the package. So the step includes the filing of the initial rulemaking file and publishing the notice of the proposed action on your website and emailing interested parties or mailing if someone's asked for snail mail. You still do that. The notice is to be posted on the board's website and published in what's called the California Regulatory Notice Register at least 45 days prior to any hearing and close of public comment period as described in your notice. OAL is responsible for this publication once it's accepted it for filing. The notice is reviewed by them and they will notify you within 3 days, usually, of any deficiencies, business days, I should say, of any deficiencies in the notice. The notice is published only on Fridays with a final filing of 10 calendar days preceding publication date. So it's a 45-day public comment period plus 10 days if you think about it, because we have to file it 10 days ahead of publication to the public for OAL to scrutinize it and see whether they'll accept it for filing. So it's a 55-day process, the initial stage, really. Once the notice is approved, your staff will mail the notice to the interested parties and businesses and post it on your website. Next slide, please. In the official 45-day comment period, members must consider all comments on a regulation. Staff typically prepares proposed responses to comments and requests the board's decision to accept comments or modify text once the comment period closes at a notice board meeting. If the board votes to accept comments and modify text, a notice of modified text will be issued, usually 15 days, and the process will continue until the board decides to make no further modifications to the text. The board job is to direct staff with regard to policy and will be the final approver of regulation text. Next slide, please. So once that process is done, we're into the final phase, and the board, at some point, like I said, will come to a decision about how the text should read. And once the final proposed language is decided at a notice board meeting, the text is approved by the board. And once again, the board would delegate authority to its executive officer to finalize the package, complete the rulemaking process. If the motion is to approve the text, the motion also includes delegations to correct non-substantive issues, like I mentioned before, and draft remaining supporting documents necessary to finalize the rulemaking. And seek approval, again, from the legal office, director, agency, Department of Finance, and OAL prior to filing the final package and getting it approved. If any control agency, what I mean by that is the ones who have authority to deny your rule, like the director, agency, DOF, OAL, if they refuse to approve the text you've approved, we'll bring it back to you with their concerns, and we'll decide what we need to do to get it through at that point. So I'll come back to a notice board meeting. So as a board member, let me go to the next slide, please. Sorry. Thank you, David. Board member action. We suggest you read the staff memo and associated documents and come prepared to ask questions, comments, and make comments and discuss at each meeting. In preparation, you should review the staff prepared memos, the text, all underlying data you've been provided, and the memos are important as they provide options and reasons for the proposal. Additionally, the supplemental materials may show you why the proposed text is necessary, what the new regulations might look like, or what is being changed in the original text. This will give you a high-level overview of the matter. While you're reading the materials, list any questions you may have so you can come to the meeting prepared and can ask staff for clarifications or the executive officer for clarifications at the meeting. As a board member, you may ask questions such as other possible alternatives, whether those were explored, or may look at or ask staff or committee of the board to research how other states or other programs have handled similar issues and report back to the board. So some of these are some of the things that can happen where the board isn't quite convinced that they like the way the text is reading and they want more research and they want it to be brought back. So don't feel like if we bring it to you like, that's it, you're done, that's all you can do. No, you can certainly look at it and say, I think that more work needs to be done. We'd like to see more information about this issue. Can you bring it back with some ideas of how to modify the text? That's always an option for you. Next slide, please. When reviewing the text, consider the rules you're about to make. We recommend that you review your regulations with the following questions in mind. Again, review the memo's text and supporting documentation. Are there unintended consequences? Is this the least restrictive alternative or interpretation your agency can choose to implement? Because these are some of the standards for which the review agencies will measure your regulation. They'll ask these questions. Next slide, please. And finally, the 6 standards the Office of Administrative Law uses to review a regulation are listed here. So it's important that when you're looking at a regulation, think about these standards and ask yourself whether these standards have been met in your opinion. Number 1, is it necessary? I think that's the second reason why most regulations fail in this department. We have not provided enough factual basis for why we've decided a particular policy decision, why we've made it a particular policy decision. The number 1 would probably be the clarity standard, which is number 7 listed on this list. And so if you're looking at something and you're like, I have no idea what this means, that's not good, because the idea is that the text is supposed to be written so that the people who are most affected by it will understand it. And so if you're reading it and you don't understand it, that's not good. And so you need to let us know. You're like, that just doesn't make any sense to me. I think it needs to be clearer. Like I said, that is the number 1 reason regulations are disapproved by OAL. And then the other ones, probably like authority and consistency. We talked about authority issues with the original proposal for the IV therapy administration regulations. That came up. and would be scrutinized by OAL. So that is the end of my lengthy presentation. If you're awake, feel free to ask me any further questions. Anything else?
I do have something. So, Christy, in one of our leadership meetings, it was stated by one of the executives that regulations and statutes should be written at like an 8th grade level reading comprehension. So just to simplify it so that we're not so legalese.
No, the standard in the APA is that you write regulations to your regulated community. So if your regulated community is highly educated, why would you need to write it to an 8th grade level? In fact, BBC's licensees are at least 10th grade and 12th for electrologists, they have to be high school graduates. So if you can write it more simply, sure. I mean, I think that's always a great idea. I mean, the easiest way to write something like just not make it harder than it has to be. But remember, there's certain things in your profession that we just can't dumb down because it's very technical and they know what it means. So one of the arguments I've made with OAL is like, I mean, I'm not going to explain auscultation because they know what it means. It's, you know, they know that it's a medical terminology they're familiar with. So if I put that word in a regulation, I'm not going to have to define it because that's in the practice of medicine, they know what auscultation means. So it's those kinds of things. I mean, things that are technical terms that your naturopathic doctors know, we don't have to define. But if it's written in a way that's kind of high-level legalese, like I don't like the word notwithstanding in regulation. I know it's used in statute a lot, but it's sort of a not real clear in a regulation when you say notwithstanding B, C, and D. Like, what are you talking about? You know, I mean, I know from an attorney's perspective, because I've been trained, that means ignore what's here in B and C and do this. But why don't you just say that in your regulation? You don't have to follow A, do B and C, right? Don't use notwithstanding. Don't use words that are highly legalese if you don't have to. So that's the kind of thing that but the standard is whatever you have to write to your regulated communities level in a way that they understand it.
I appreciate the clarification. When that kind of came out, I'm like,
I'd like them to show me where it says that because I'm not aware of a law or regulation.
I don't think it was a regulation or law. I think it was just more of a, make sure that the public, when they go in there reading it, that they can understand it. But
yes. But again, I'm just alerting the board members because I know sometimes board members are like, oh, well, it's in here, it's official. I kind of feel like, maybe I shouldn't say anything, but I don't really understand what it's talking about. I mean, feel free. I mean, that's your job. This is your job to set policy, and we don't want to make you look bad. We want to write it as best possible, and we want to make sure that it's as easy for people to understand as possible because the harder you make it, the more expensive the regulation becomes. And then finance gets involved and budget office gets involved, and they're asking us, well, why are you doing it that way? Because it's more expensive for people to do it that way because you haven't done a simplified process for people. So let's try to find, that's what the least restrictive alternative option I was talking about. Are there other options we can do that wouldn't be as difficult for someone to comply with, a process we can use that's easier, like instead of, a 50-page manual application, maybe we want to go online and just, have our applications work in an online platform. It's simpler. So, I mean, these are the things that come up when we're developing it, so. You're welcome. Anything else? Any other questions? Okay, David, see if there's any other questions on this item, please.
I think we need to ask for public comment in the room.
Do we have any board members online or no? Okay.
Is there any public comment in the room? All right, moderator, do you want to open up to public comment online?
Now is the time to raise a hand for public comment on agenda item 7. If you'd like to make a comment, tap that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial in users, dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request on the presentation that Christy just gave. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for that, Christy. That was really helpful.
You're welcome.
At this point, we're going to actually move on to agenda item number 5, which is the presentation from the budget office, correct?
We're going to do executive office and then budget office issues really quick.
Okay, wonderful. Executive office first and then budget office. Thank you so much for being here.
Go ahead. You can hear me. Yeah, I think we can.
You want to use this?
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to come and provide the DCA update today. First, I'd like to welcome your newest board member, Thais. Welcome. And I'd also like to thank the remainder of the board for your continued service and dedication to protect the consumers of California. Last month, the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency officially welcomed Secretary Tamika Moss. DCA extends a warm welcome to Secretary Moss and looks forward to working with her. Next, boards and bureaus are reminded of the Department of Finance's budget letter that directed all state agencies under the governor to take immediate action to reduce current year expenditures with certain exceptions for time-sensitive, emergency-related, mission-critical, or information security needs. The department would like to thank all of the boards and bureaus for doing their part to reduce expenses and find cost savings as part of a collective state agency effort. If you have any questions related to the current year expenditure reductions, please contact DCA Board and Bureau Relations. Next, I have a diversity, equity, and inclusion update, which I'll refer to as DEI. The DEI Steering Committee will hold its next meeting on April 5th. The committee will discuss DEI actions, priorities, and language access. The committee will also elect a new chairperson. DEI training opportunities continue to be a priority for the department. As you may recall, DCA Solid Trainers underwent a DEI certification program with the University of Massachusetts in April of last year. Before this certification, Solid offered 3 DEI-related courses for employees. After obtaining certification, Solid has developed 11 new courses. In 2023, DCA achieved 2,079 DEI course completions. I would like to remind the board of the training courses available to its members on DCA's learning management system, including a recent training edition titled How Leaders Navigate DEI Dialogue in the Workplace. The training is provided by Christopher Veal, who has 25 years of coaching, training, and leadership development experience. It offers tools for effective conversations, psychological safety, and how it impacts these conversations, and includes discussion around challenges leaders are facing. This training is available online and can be completed at your convenience. Should members have any questions, please contact DCA Board and Bureau Relations. Next, invited by the Senate Committee on Business Professions and Economic Development, DCA Director Kirchmeier testified last month at an informational hearing focused on interstate licensure compacts. The director discussed the impact of licensing compacts on consumer protection, licensees, and boards and bureaus, as well as the legislature. Director Kirchmeier answered questions from the committee and provided examples demonstrating that compacts are not a one-size-fits-all solution. Rather, there are many factors for the legislature to continue, including the priorities of consumer protection and licensing standards that should not be compromised or lowered. 17 of the 36 36 boards and bureaus under DCA offer some form of reciprocity already. With several bills recently introduced proposing licensure compacts for DCA boards, the department will continue to work with the legislature on this issue. Next, in collaboration with the DCA executive leadership team and the executive officer, Bureau Chief Cabinet, DCA's Division of Investigation updated the complaint prioritization and referral guidelines for healing arts boards. The guidelines were shared with board leadership, and as of March 1, 2024, these guidelines should be used when determining which complaints to refer to DOI and what can remain with each respective program. Of note, referral guidelines for the professions and vocations boards and bureaus are in progress and will be completed soon. Next, I have a Form 700 reminder. Board and committee members are required to file a statement of economic interest, Form 700, within 30 days of their appointment annually and within 30 days of leaving office. This year's annual filing period covers the prior calendar year, January 1 through December 31st, 2023. The official deadline for filing is Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024. However, to ensure compliance, DCA requested that Form 700 filers complete the e-filing by Friday, March 15, 2024. If you haven't filed your Form 700, you should have received an email from NetFile with instructions on how to file. If you have any questions or would like more information related to filing your Form 700, please contact Melissa Gear, Board and Bureau Relations, as the deadline is quickly approaching. Next, I have a board member orientation training information for you. DCA board members are required to complete board member orientation training within 1 year of appointment and reappointment. This training provides an important overview of the roles and responsibilities of a board member and access to a variety of resources and support DCA has to offer. Board members can register through DCA's learning management system for upcoming 2024 trainings, which will be offered virtually on June 18th and October 22nd. This concludes the DCA update. Thank you again for the opportunity to join your meeting today. And at this time, I'll turn it back to Chair Thompson, and I welcome any questions from the board.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for putting up with my scratchy voice.
Appreciate that, so helpful. Are there any questions in the room? What comment in the room?
There's nobody online.
All right, we're going to ask for public comment online.
We are now accepting public comment online for agenda item 5. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, thank you. All right, Budget Office, thank you so much for being with us today.
Good morning. My name is Matt Nishamini. I'm with the DCA Budget Office. I'm not seeing a fund condition statement aligned with this agenda item number 5. So maybe it would be more efficient if we skip to agenda item number 8. But I defer to I defer to you guys.
Okay, so we're going to move on to agenda item number 8.4, and we'll go back and do the beginning of item 8 after that.
Oh, okay.
So before Ms. Mitchell jumps into her report, maybe we can go to the item number 8.3, there is a fund condition statement in your board meeting materials. 8.3 would be the one I'm referring to.
Hold on just a moment, please. So while we're waiting for that, I'll just tell you a little bit more about myself and my role in these regulations. I am Christy, Ms. Shields' counterpart. I'm in the budget office, and I do all the fiscal and economic analyses for all the regulations that go through the department. I have a lot of, and prior to this, I worked at the Department of Finance for 7 years, 3 with the DCA assignment. So I have lots of experience working these regulations. Okay, so what we have, thank you, David. What we have up on this screen is the board's fund condition statement. It's based upon the 2024-25 governor's budget. And then we have the current year, that second column there, sort of in the middle of the screen, CY 23-24, says FM5. So that's through fiscal month 5, so through December. And then what we do is we take those, the data through fiscal month 5, and then we project out what we think is going to happen the remaining of the year. So that column is a projection. If we can just, so we can see that there's about 578,000 in revenue is what we're projecting, a little bit more than the prior year. That first column, those are actuals. So you actually brought in 558,000 last year. And you can see that most of the revenues come from renewal fees, and that sort of makes sense, right? That's your largest population. And then moving down from the revenues, we've got expenditures. So 1111, 374,000 in the prior year. That's what the board actually spent last year, 374,000. And then there was an 11,000 payment in supplemental pension payments. That was a direct draw to help prop up some unfunded pension liabilities. And then there was the statewide general admin pro rata of $17,000. And that goes to pay for the Department of Finance, the State Controller's Office, some centralized services. And so that's the board's direct contribution with a total outlay of $402,000. So you can see in the prior year, the board actually brought in more, $558,000, than it expended, which was $402,000. And it ended up with a reserve balance of $888,000, or about 14.4 months in reserve. And that's that last line, shaded green. Now we go to the current year. So the current year, we're pretty much on track, a little bit more than what we collected last year, $578,000. But you can see that in that 1111 line, the costs to the board have spiked up to $711,000. And these cost increases are directly related to the board's last sunset bill, AB 2685. And 2685 created additional mandates for the board. It required that the board hire an additional enforcement position to ensure that full compliance with the Act. And so that's also going to increase other enforcement-related activities and costs, investigations with the the Division of Investigations, which is our DCA enforcement officers. And then also it could increase Attorney General and Office of Administrative Hearing costs. And so that's why we're seeing that spike. And so ongoing, we see that now the board is expending more than it's bringing in. So in the current year, total outlays are $740,000.
but you're only bringing in 578,000. So we call this a structural imbalance when revenues are less than expenditures. And then you can see that eventually, so that month in reserve line down at the bottom, it goes down to 10.9 months. And if we continue on this trend, it's going to go down to 7 months and 2.9 months. And then it goes in the red. So we can't allow you to go in the red. The board members, the board has a fiduciary responsibility to maintain solvency. You board members have a fiduciary responsibility to ensure proper stewardship of the board's fiscal state. So something needs to happen. Either you have a couple of options. You can either increase revenues, or you could decrease costs, or you can do some combination of the two. But this is where we're at. So with that, this kind of tees up the rest of the conversation. So I will hand it off to the executive officer at this point.
Thank you, Matt. And did we want to go through the next slide, or shall we just go ahead and go to 8.1?
I would think 8.1, I defer to you. The last slide is really shows the fee increases.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. I know you have a hard stop, so I just want to make sure that we get you out of here on time. All right. So if you'll notice that 8.1 agenda item, and you guys have all had a copy of this sent to you, is a memo. Discussion and possible action to initiate rulemaking and to amend Title 16 California Code of Regulations, Section 4240 regarding fees. So as Matt was saying, we had back in 2018, it was identified that the board had a structural imbalance in its naturopathic doctors fund, which would mean that the board was projected to run out of revenue. This caused Senate Bill 1480, which was Chapter 571, Statute 2018, to authorize a fee increase to help ensure the board was able to meet its operational needs. Effective January 1st, 2019, those fees were raised. The board implemented the provisions of SB 1480. And the board's fee structure to maintain the operation of the board and restore funds in its reserve by increasing the application, initial licensing, and renewal fees, and establishing a fee for the certified license verification process. Department of Consumer Affairs Budget Office has since identified that the fees enacted in 2018 legislation are no longer adequate to cover the board's expenditures and do not address the increase in future operational costs. The Budget Office projects the board will deplete its existing revenue fund by fiscal year 2026-27 and recommends increasing the board's application, initial licensing, and renewal fees to help address that cost. Regulations Council provided the following information regarding the board's fiduciary responsibilities, and you guys have outlined basically stating what we're not allowed to allow our fund to go in, or our board to go insolvent. I'm not going to read through all those. We have them.
Can I just add? I think the other reason I asked for this to be put in the memo was because the Budget Act provides that if you do allow the fund to go insolvent, that you all are personally liable to repay the state that excess.
Right.
So that's why I want you to know this, because you have a personal liability exposure, and so does your executive officer. Any officer of any board that allows this fund to go insolvent may have to open up their own wallet and pay the money that's owed by vendors, staff, whatever it is, to the state. So this is why it's important for you at every board meeting to look at the budget report and take it real to heart and really look at it hard to make sure you're on track to stay solvent, because you have personal liability exposure. And I want you to, a lot of my board members don't know this when they sign up for the job. I don't know if they don't tell you or it's not explained well or what, but it seems to not. So every time I do a fee increase memo for a reg, I tell my members, because I want them to be informed about that. So let me know if you have any other questions on those issues.
Thanks, Christy.
Welcome.
All right. So the data to support the fee increase, the board staff recently completed desk audit. The outcome of the desk audit confirmed that the actual cost to process and administer the board's application, initial licensing fee, and renewals exceeds the current fees charged in these categories as well as the statutory maximum. The attached document workload cost analysis, which is your attachment 8.2, outlines the board's current actual cost to process each application, initial license, or renewal. Considering the foregoing, I am requesting the action to be taken and address impending structural imbalance for the board's fund through consideration of approval of option 1 with an effective on filing date, which means the regulations would go into effect on the date approved by the Office of Administrative Law rather than quarterly. Action requested. It is requested that the board review all attachments and consider one of the following options. Option 1 is to approve the proposed regulatory text and changes to 16 CCR 4240 as provided in attachment 1 to the materials and direct staff to submit all approved text to the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs and Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency for review. If no adverse comments are received, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, make any non-substantive changes to the package, and set the matter for a hearing if requested. If no adverse comments are received during the 45-day comment period and no hearing is requested, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking and adopt the proposed regulations at 16 CCR section 4240 as noticed with an effective on filing date. The other option, option 2, would be to approve proposed regulatory text and changes to 16 CCR section 4240 as provided in attachment 8.2 to the materials, but with the changes approved at this meeting and direct staff to submit all approved text.
So I think that one's for if you don't want to approve the text that we've provided in the meeting packet. So if you have any concerns and want to change the numbers in there and you have a factual basis for that, then we would make a separate motion to make those changes and then use option 2 to approve those changes. But I think our recommendation is option 1 because without the increase to the max, the statutory cap, you're going to go insolvent sooner rather than later. So I don't know if this is one of the cases you want to try to exercise your discretion to do option 2. So sorry to cut you off, Rebecca, but I just want to make sure that they understand that if we don't go with option 1, it will just be they'll be in a more fiscally unstable position, I think, in my opinion. I think, Matt, would you support that recommendation?
Yeah, so let me just note that my office, we don't make recommendations. We just basically do the math, and we're showing you what is going to happen. If the board doesn't do anything, you're going to go insolvent. You'll be insolvent in the 26-27 year. If you increase your fees to the caps, which is that last fund condition statement with the blue there, you'll push it out a year, that insolvency. But you're still going to have to do something in the future. You're either going to have to seek legislative authority to increase your caps, possibly with your next sunset review, which is in that 2026, you'll be up for hearing. So you could seek additional authority to increase your caps at that point. So this is a necessary stopgap to delay insolvency by 1 year, but it's not going to fully right-size the board on an ongoing basis. And it really goes back to AB 2685 that is causing these additional costs.
Thank you, Matt.
So the regulatory language we're looking at is 8.2.
Correct. Yeah.
I noticed that it has increase in fees for the application and the initial licensure. I don't see anything about renewal here.
Right. So if you go under the fee schedule, it actually, that's the purpose.
I see here.
Yeah, and so underneath it'll have the renewal fee up to $1,200.
Okay. And then also a point of clarification, for the statutory maximum, so that is statutory maximum not just for the application fee, but also the renewal fee from 800 to 400. So we're just hitting max on everything that we can.
So right now we're at 1,000 for renewals and 1,000 for initial license fee because we're working on the actual statute. It's not clarified in regulation yet. The regulations are still the old regulations. So that has already been brought up to 1,000. We're requesting and definitely want to consider that 1,200 max stat.
And so that is, so this, in going back to Christy's presentation, the statute gives you that limit, right?
Correct.
And we're trying to, and just a question I think on that is, I'm presuming that the statute gives us that limit, but that doesn't adjust for any sort of like inflation or any sort of rising costs. So literally every time that we need an increase over the maximum is a change in the legislative vehicle,
yes.
Essentially.
Well, the good news is that you have a sunset coming up, and that's when most of the boards ask for a cap change to increase their cap, so they have more flexibility to adjust for the issues you've mentioned, cost increase. And, you know, our employee wages and inflationary wages have continued to go up, and bargaining unit agreements have increased people's salaries and given greater benefits, and that all has to be paid for.
Right, and the way that I'm understanding attachment 8.3, whichever one had the hours by classification, cost by classification. Essentially, our cap doesn't even recuperate how much it costs us. Like
no, this is a short. The regs, and we would say this in the rulemaking is the regulations would be a short-term fix, not a long-term solution. A long-term solution would require legislative intervention, either on the board's own bill or in sunset. The sunset is, I think, is the simplest method I've found so far to get those changes through, because you get all of your program issues addressed in one foul swoop, and usually that's the best time to provide that request for a cap increase.
And when is that regulation, or when is the sunset review for?
Sunset review, we start our review in 25, I believe.
2026.
2026,
right?
Right.
Yeah.
It sounds like from what you're saying that we are required to have a cap.
Yes.
There's not a way that you can say that the fees will increase as it with.
Well, you could, I mean, you could ask the legislature to do that, but they usually don't give us that kind of free rein. They usually respond to the regulated community with the understanding that we're going to regulate them and make sure they don't go and raise fees unreasonably high. And so they require us to keep coming back and justifying the cap going higher and higher and demonstrate it factually. So I don't know many fees except for exam fees, where they say that the exam fee is whatever it costs the board just to produce that exam. Usually they give that kind of flexibility for examination. Understanding exams costs can radically fluctuate so much that they're not going to pin us to a cap. But most of the other fees are capped to address concerns by the regulated community, and they have stakeholders that will protest typically. So yes, you legally could, but from a policy perspective, the legislature tends to not allow that sort of flexibility. Well, you could ask, but I don't know that you'd be successful getting it. But
I have further questions and comments, but I will reserve that time and pass it to my other colleagues in case anyone else has questions or comments.
Do we have a more accurate number of what or fee structure that would give us further years of surplus in funds, as opposed to, I understand 1,200 and there's justification here for it, but thinking further in the future, let's say when sunset does come to pass, are we thinking 1,400? What would that projection look like?
We've not done that analysis
what is
yet.
They haven't done it.
Matt, you said you have not done that analysis yet?
No, we've not done that analysis yet.
Okay. So we can certainly bring that to a future agenda item. Bring it back to you. But what we're saying now, the analysis we've done is we're not capturing all the costs. So we're going to not tell OAL that this will fix everything for you, but it will certainly buy you some time until you're able to pursue legislative changes to fully recover all the costs that you are losing currently in the processing of these various items.
And so would that projection come, let's say, next fiscal year, or when would we know that number?
I mean, Matt, I don't know what your workload is like, but.
Right. So so there's a couple of options that the board could undertake. The board would take the lead on it regardless. The board could do an internal study similarly to what they did in the item, the board meeting 8.2, was it? They could do a workload analysis like that and project out. So just looking at this fund condition statement, I'll just note that the farther you go out in years, the less reliable it is, right? Because we don't know what is going to happen. We don't know all of the enforcement related costs and workload and costs that are going to be associated with that additional position that you received from AB 2685. If all of a sudden your AG, your Attorney General costs spike, then that target's going to be higher. And we don't know that yet. We also don't know if that position is sufficient or not. Maybe the board would need an additional position, and maybe there could be future legislation. So teeing it up for the 26th sunset period, we would think that the board would either do an internal internal fee study to assess that probably about a year before. So probably somewhere, starting in about a year from now. Or they could contract with a third-party independent contractor to do that analysis. But we would think it's going to probably be in about a year and a half, something like that, so that report would be ready for the sunset hearings to provide to the legislature so that they can make an informed decision on what those fee levels would be.
If I can just add to that, if we went to an outside vendor, the fee for that or the cost for that is extremely high. It would be better for us to do an internal audit.
And remind me again the number of months of surplus that we'd like a year.
So it used to be 3 months, but I don't know, Matt.
Yeah, so the board has a statutory cap of 24 months. And everybody is different. So as Christy was saying, it used to be in the range of 3 to 6 months, but we think now it's probably higher, more like 6 to 10 months. And that's because you'll note that on that fund condition statement, the board's costs continue to grow over time. So in this model, we have it growing at a 3% year over year. And that is basically for salaries and wages related to bargaining unit agreements and just other inflationary costs that the board will be going through. So that's always going to increase. So, another thing to note, when you have this structural imbalance, when revenues are less than expenditures, this thing accelerates over time. So it widens over time. So the sooner you implement your fees, the better it is to soften those impacts.
So, do we need to vote as a board to adopt this so that it can get the regulatory package?
I mean, that's my recommendation to you because of your liability exposure, and Ms. Mitchell and I are recommending option 1 on page 4 of the memo that she read previously into the record. So if anyone's interested in making the motion, that's what we're recommending.
Last question. I noticed in the analysis that for the additional fees, it shows it's effective 1/1/2025. Is it possible to make it effective sooner than that?
Well, we're asked, go ahead.
I believe the text that Rebecca read said that it would be effective upon signing. So it is actually, at the time it gets approved, it goes into effect.
So it's possible that we might be a little better off
Yes.
with this analysis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just have to get this rolling as quickly as possible.
Right. So
That's
we
my
put that target in. We put that 1/1/25 as a target. It certainly could be done faster. The rulemaking process does take time because it's a public process. But really, the first step is the actions that you guys take today. If you guys, if you approve the proposal, then the board can start working on this. Christy and I can start working on this, and it could very well be before 1/1/25, but that is just a target.
So realistically, what we're looking at is 2 fee increases, right, over the next, let's say, 4 years. Now and then at sunset in 2 years.
Potentially, yeah. If they give that to us, I mean, they can say no. So hopefully they will, see the issues that we're having, the challenges. Another thing, we lose a lot of our licensees when they see the restrictiveness of your guys' scope here. So that is going to be something that we should probably be looking at to see about maybe doing some modernization to our scope, because that will potentially keep the businesses for naturopathic medicine and the doctors here in California instead of them going up to Oregon to have a better scope, right? So that is what we've seen. I've talked about this before, that we have a trend where, because we have Bastyr down in San Diego, people come and, the students will go to Bastyr. They set up shop, because who doesn't want to set up shop in California, right? It's a beautiful state. So they set up shop, and then in 2 years, they're like, no, I'm leaving. And so they don't renew. And we see that so often. So it's a really, it's one of those things where I think we have the ability to start looking at some of these things and making some changes or suggestions legislatively to help kind of keep that population here in California.
So maybe we can discuss that on a future agenda, sure. But anyway, go ahead. Relating to the fee increase,
yes. Any
questions?
Thank you. Well, actually, it was kind of a little bit of both. It was to Rebecca's point that was something that I was interested in. I think that in relation to the fee increase, although, I think that it is necessary for financial solvency, I think at this point, but I think that it points to a bigger problem of, if we're reliant on renewal fees, where that revenue is coming from, right? If we're seeing trends, and we see this in, perhaps Southeast example of education, right? If education funding is tied to student numbers and the student population count is going down, why, right? And what can we do to then take action to address sort of the intrinsic problem of, why do we have less revenue and less revenue and less revenue? So I will, to Chrissy's point, hold that comment and at the appropriate time and request an item to be brought back to the board. But in terms of this fee increase, it is necessary for financial solvency, right? Because similar in other situations, once you have a negative fee balance or negative fund balance, it goes downhill essentially from there, right? But I didn't know that part about how we are now held personally liable.
Yeah, well, that's why I mentioned it, because every board I've ever talked to has said, did that happen? And I'm like, well, it's always been the case, actually. And it's in every budget act, and it's been in the government code for a while. So, but I don't think it's always explained. And so I think that's, again, this is why the budget is brought to you at every board meeting. We have a budget officer come and explain, an analyst or an officer come and explain the consequences and the issues. So it's important. This is an important item to always be cognizant of when you're at the meeting. This is your opportunity to ask what's being done to control costs, what's being done to make sure that there are issues, like you mentioned, that need to be brought up and discussed about the licensing pool, or what we can do operationally to make sure you stay solvent.
And to that point, if I may, that means, the way that I'm hearing it, is that we have a fiduciary responsibility to the board and specifically to the generation of revenue to a certain extent that we depend on that revenue for operational purposes, correct?
Yes.
Help guide, I think, my next item, but until we get to the point where we can suggest future items, I will withhold my comments.
This is Matt again. I'll just say, I think these are all good questions, great comments, and we certainly would want to further explore and discuss all of these issues. Clearly, I mean, it really is a linear mathematical exercise. You have a relatively small licensee population base of around 1,300 or so to fund these costs of nearly $8 million in the very near future. And so it's a very easy mathematical exercise to do. To the extent the board wants to remain an independent organization, agency, and implement your act and regulate your licensees, then you have these mandates. And one of these mandates is to remain solvent so that you can enforce your act, regulate your licensees and your community.
Thank you, Matt.
Do we have quick comment? Can we just make sure that we add what we discussed today to this planning meeting that we're going to have? I think, you know, he makes a good point about there's a bigger picture here. We can't always have fee increases. We have to look at the scope and really try to work to expand that, because that's really where the issue is.
That is.
All right, I'd like to ask for public comment.
Well, if you have, do you want to take a motion first and then ask for public comment? Because if you have a motion,
the order.
Typically I'd recommend that, because then otherwise you have to take public comment twice, unless you want to have public comment to get input before you make your motion.
Yeah, I was trying to go in the right order. Thank you.
Sure.
I'd like to motion that we approve the proposed regulatory language changes of 16 CCR 4240 as written.
So are you recommending moving option one?
Option one.
Second.
Thank you, Bruce. And then we ask for public comment before we vote?
Yes.
All right, I'd love to call for public comment.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. If you'd like to make a comment online, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. For our mobile device users, please remember you have 3 different screens and only one of them has that hand button. So you may need to hit the ellipses button, that ... in order to find the appropriate screen. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes. Rebecca, can you do roll call vote?
Thank you. All right, Dr. Dara Thompson.
Yes.
Dr. Mina Yoon.
Yes.
Dr. Vera Singleton. Yes. Dr. Sitara Tice.
Yes.
Dr. Deparshi Mukherjee.
Yes.
Mr. Andy Yam.
Aye.
And Dr. Bruce Davidson.
Yes.
And that moves with 7.
Wonderful.
Well, can we just do the regulatory update?
That's what I was going to
Okay.
Real quick.
Go ahead. Yeah, so we're just going to quickly do agenda item number 9, which is the regulatory update, so we don't have to keep Christy through lunch.
Thank you. So did you want to do that, Rebecca?
I can give a brief kind of what I have, and I know that we're going to be moving a little bit sooner than what we had anticipated. So let me just go ahead and provide an update really quick.
I can show you.
All right, so name change, which is basically the Section 100 is currently being done. I will be having that package over to Christy within, I would say, the next week and a half. Delegation of functions, that package will be over to OAL by 6/20/2024 is what we've got it scheduled for. The fees, it was supposed to go over September, but as we just discussed today, that is going to be moved as soon as we're done with this board meeting. We'll start getting those forms over and get that package sent over to our regulatory council. Inactive status, retired status, those both were supposed to go at the same time as the fees, but they will be going in September. The retired status, I may put back onto another meeting. I think that because we're asking for a fee increase, it's kind of silly to ask for a fee increase and then turn around and ask for a fee to be decreased for something different. So we may want to talk about that before we push that package forward. And those, again, September 2024. And then the IV injection therapy package at the end of the year in December. So we'll be working on that as well. Did you want to add anything to that, Christy?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right, and we're done with agenda item number 9. Were there any questions?
Any public comments? All right, any public comment online?
We are accepting public comment online for agenda item 9. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. For our mobile device users, please find the hand button by tapping the ellipses button, the ... You have 3 different pages and only one of them has a hand button. We're going to take a few seconds before we continue on. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, thank you. So at this point, we are going to break for lunch. We have food over here. How long are we breaking for?
45 minutes.
We're going to break for 45 minutes. So it is 12:08. So we're coming back at 12:53. Did I do that right? All right, let's say 12:55 to make a round number. We'll be returning at 12:55 to resume our meeting. Yeah.
Yes, I did.
All right. Welcome back, everyone, to the March 28th, 2024 California Board of Naturopathic Medicine meeting. It is 12:56. We're resuming our meeting. We are going to do another roll call.
Dr. Dara Thompson.
Present.
Dr. Mina Yoon. Present. Dr. Vera Singleton. Present. Dr. Satara Tice. Present. Dr. Deparshi Mukherjee had to excuse himself for the remainder of this meeting. Mr. Andy Yam.
Present.
Dr. Bruce Davidson.
Present.
Great, thank you, and we've got quorum.
Wonderful. We're now going to move on to agenda item 12. Discussion and possible action on the strategic plan amendment of the board mission, vision, and value statement. Rebecca?
Great, and I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to our solid team who is assisting us with the this agenda item.
And the microphones will catch.
It should, yes.
Okay. So, hello, I'm Elizabeth Cornell, lead facilitator. I spoke to most of you, if not all of you here I've spoken to. For the interview I have with me.
Hi, I'm Sarah Ronnie. I'm also a strategic planner and facilitator with Solid.
Our role today, we're here as a neutral party. We're just here to provide the structure, gather your insight, and document that and bring it back to the executive officer and the board. So today, we're focusing on vision, values, and goals. We do ask if you please minimize distractions, participate and contribute. The mission, vision, values, and goals are very important to the strategic plan. They are the foundation of it. Respect each other's contributions. Everybody has different backgrounds, different experiences, all very valid and willing to reach a consensus. So agenda, again, mission, vision, values, and goals. And a quick reason why, or explaining why is a good reason to establish your mission, vision, values, and goals. Your mission and your values, they give, all of them give direction. Your mission and values tell you where you are now. Your vision and goals tell you where you're going to, where you're headed. So think of it as the foundation of a house. To build a strong foundation for your house not to fall down so easily, you should have very clear mission, values, and visions along with your goals. I'll define them a little bit more here. So your mission is the purpose why the board exists. What do you do? Why are people getting licensed? And your values are your guiding principles, how you behave. And we'll go into further details as we address each one. The vision is what you strive to do and the end result. Let's say when your mission is finally accomplished, what does that look like? And your goals, they're just broad areas in which you are working towards. And we'll be defining those a little bit further here. So we'll go into the mission statement first. So mission statement, again, it defines the purpose. Why do you exist as a board? It provides direction to the staff, to the EO, to the board members. In a mission statement, as I mentioned, why does the organization exist? Who are its stakeholders and how it serves stakeholders? An effective mission statement is short so that it's memorable. It's simple by avoiding using technical words or jargon that all your stakeholders may not understand. And operable, so using action words that signify direction and movement. So we have a mission statement formula. We're not too strict about it. It's just components that we recommend having in a mission statement. It's action word, specifying what is it that you do, how you do it, and why or who do that. And it doesn't have to have them in that same order. We just recommend having those. And here's an example from the Board of Vocational Nursing and Psychiatric Technicians. The board serves and protects the public by licensing qualified and competent vocational nurses and psychiatric technicians through ongoing educational oversight, regulation, and enforcement. Using the formula, it breaks down their action word, serves and protects. What they do, they license qualified and competent vocational nurses and so on. How they do it through educational oversight, regulation, enforcement, and for whom they do all of this is for the public, for consumer protection. So the EO, Rebecca Mitchell, and staff, Raquel, participated in a mission, vision, values, and goals workshop where they worked together to draft a proposed mission statement. So refining the previous mission statement, the original one, refining it a little bit to come with this proposed mission statement that we would like to present to you for your review and, if needed, any edits and your approval. So I'll give you a moment to read that.
I would suggest perhaps that we might add the word high in front of quality to, and actually we take out and so that it says to access to safe, high quality care.
Yes, that's fine. And please make any, recommendations, suggestions that you guys want. The only reason that we did this is because, as you remember, during the last strategic plan, it took us almost 3 hours just to do the mission, vision, value statement stuff. And it doesn't leave us a lot of time to actually deal with the plan itself. So I thought if we could kind of just massage the message a little bit and bring it back to you. It was very wordy, the first one that we had. So yeah, please feel free to add or take from this
if you feel necessary.
So just this one just came up. It's not a note that I had originally written, but would it be important to have licensing somewhere in here? The word licensing is regulating practice of naturopathic medicine, maybe by regulating.
I feel licensing is implied.
But I think that's the core competency of this, of the reason why we get out of bed, essentially, right? Or Rebecca gets out of bed, to essentially issue licenses.
Right, and we did. So just so you guys remember, the current mission statement is to protect California healthcare consumers and expand access to safe and effective primary care by licensing and regulating naturopathic doctors through vigorous enforcement of the Naturopathic Doctors Act. Now, the vigorous enforcement, it just sounds really harsh. We wanted to soften it a little bit because we do other things. And so, Mr. Am, to your, statement is, yes, licensing is a part of that. And although it is implied with this new mission statement, we can definitely put it in there because that is kind of the direction that you guys went last time. You definitely thought that it was important to identify that we actually do license and regulate. So if you feel that licensing should be appropriate in here, then absolutely let's add it.
That would be my suggestion. However, I will also leave it to my colleagues to also chime in so we can collect a decision. The second suggestion that I was going to make as I was reading this through was I just wasn't the biggest fan of the word promote. Seems like we are sort of selling something, right? You're promoting something, you're trying to get it more visibility, but I was kind of feeling
emphasize.
I just thought of like establish, or I don't know if that's the right word for that, but I just wasn't the biggest fan of the word promoting because I think that the board, in its capacity to make decisions, is setting that standard as opposed to trying to promote some sort of otherwise standard that I think is not maybe conducive to the board itself.
And I can see that, and coming from a public member, I could see where somebody may look at that and say, isn't that the professional association's duty to promote the, so absolutely, and I can see where you could see that. So
along those lines, it could be ensures. It's another one that's a positive kind of a.
I like that better because establishes seems like we're just starting out and we're not.
Right.
Sure.
I like ensures better. And I like it better as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're all on the same page, I think, in terms of thinking about how we're all sort of lifting it up as high as it can go, right?
Absolutely. And that's why we came with this today, so that you guys can kind of take a look at this and not take 3 hours during strategic planning. So this is very helpful.
And I want to just say, I think it's really important, instead of just thinking about vigorous enforcement, to think about all the other things that the board does. And I think we've just come through a period of time where that was really, really evident during COVID, where most of what we were doing wasn't about enforcement. It was about supporting our licensees. It was about educating them sort of tirelessly on Rebecca's part. When I had to stand up there at Sunset, it was really, really easy when they started asking me questions about COVID, because Rebecca had worked so hard to make sure that we were just educating our licensees with every step of what they should be doing, what they could be doing, what they shouldn't be doing, like all throughout. It was so much support to the licensees and the consumers.
Are we saying here that are we regulating naturopathic doctors or the practice of naturopathic medicine?
Both, because your guys' scope is naturopathic medicine here in California, right? So your scope, we're regulating. Actually, we're enforcing the scope. We're regulating the doctor. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. So we want to write this in this way because the people who are practicing naturopathic medicine unlicensed would be also inclusive of this.
Right. Yeah, and that's, I'll keep that for another topic.
Yep.
So were you saying, Nina, like instead of naturopathic medicine, naturopathic doctors in there?
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to just see what the difference would be with that, because
So you could, I mean, if you guys feel better about using enforce instead of regulating, so the well-being of Californians by enforcing the practice of naturopathic medicine, we can definitely make that distinction, but it really is either or, because we do regulate it in its entirety.
Yeah, enforcing.
It just sounds harsh, and yeah,
we're enforcing the structure that surrounds the practice of licensed naturopathic doctors.
Okay. But we are a regulatory board, and that's what we are.
And we do a lot of the focus of, especially in the area of enforcement, is on licensed practice, right? So that kind of broadens that scope perspective.
Right.
So it's, yeah.
To make sure we did get consensus with the change promotes to ensures all board members. Do you feel that's a change that you? A question for council: ensures, does it? In the past, we've gotten feedback from some of the legal counsel saying that ensure is a strong word, to say that the board will ensure because of like certain liability issues.
And I'm not the biggest fan of that word, but again, it's a mission statement, which is kind of aspirational. I'm not necessarily creating any liability on the board itself, but I would personally take a different one.
Okay. And same with the high quality care. I've had some legal counsel for some of the boards say, well, we establish minimum standards. So when you say high quality, it's almost sending like a mixed message.
That's interesting.
So instead of ensures, we could, I'm just using synonyms here.
Yeah.
So we could go with safeguards, guarantees, confirms, certifies, or warrants. I think they're all still pretty.
I think strong.
They're very strong.
You don't want to say guarantees.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to use guarantee.
What about certify?
Supports?
Maybe supports would be better. A manner that supports access to
That's, we're not guaranteeing it, but
we're not guaranteeing it, but we are supporting that.
Right.
Yeah.
And would you like to keep the high quality care?
Yes, I think that was a great addition.
I mean, I have to say, I appreciate your comment in that, or the comment that you're reflecting that you heard before about that. Is it a minimum standard that's being established, right, or not? I mean, is it a minimum standard that we're establishing?
I mean, I think we have two things that we're addressing here. There's the fact that as a board, we do establish minimum standards. Like there's stuff you just have to be able to do and you can't do if you're going to be a naturopathic doctor, right? But I think in this reference, when we're talking about high quality care, we're talking about improving access to a type of medicine that improves the access to high quality care that Californians have, right? So it's not saying like, we're going to make all naturopathic doctors be exceptional, but that we think naturopathic medicine improves the overall quality of healthcare in California. That makes sense.
Dr. Thompson, you mean that the practice of naturopathic medicine at a high level is a means to an end, that end being high quality care for Californians?
That's not exactly what I meant. I meant to say that the inclusion of naturopathic medicine in the healthcare of Californians elevates the quality of care that Californians can receive.
Board members do feel that is communicated by that end to save high quality care.
Are neutral on it. I see it both ways. I'm not really for or against either.
I think it definitely elevated the first version that we brought to you today. So
I like it a lot better. But definitely it's up to you guys as a board to adopt, to massage this until you have what you want as your mission statement, and then we can adopt it if that's what you want to do today.
Just for clarity, we decided not to put licensed naturopathic medicine for the sake of enforcement of non-licensed practitioners. Is that what we're doing?
Well,
we decided not to put naturopathic doctors and to keep it as naturopathic medicine.
Practice of license.
Of license. I was thinking that as well, because
so much of our enforcement is about unlicensed activity.
Right.
We're deep in that.
But is regulating the practice of licensed naturopathic medicine implying that we therefore also act on unlicensed?
That's what we do.
Naturopathic medicine, because it's in contradiction to the practice of licensed practice. Sorry, I
If
know
we
that
were going to add licensed in, I would prefer to put it where you originally recommended it, licensing and regulating the practice of naturopathic medicine. I think that just flows better.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we're licensing the NDs, but we're regulating the practice of naturopathic medicine. Yeah, that's absolutely right, spot on.
Can you put both licensed and unlicensed?
No. No, we don't want to call it out.
Yeah.
No.
We definitely don't want to do that.
You can definitely address it in the objectives. The June planning session is to create specific objectives.
Yeah. And I absolutely agree that we'll.
How do you all feel about this, the new mission statement here, the second paragraph?
I personally like it.
Look at that. See, we got it from a neutral to an approved. Good job.
Did you want to go through all of them, or did you want to take minutes? Do you want to motion? I'm not sure. I'll step aside and let you.
Well, I don't see any public members here. There's 2 attendees online, so there may be public comment out there, but maybe do you want to go through the whole thing, or else we're going to have to call for public comment? Because if you guys make a motion on this to adopt any of these things, then we'd have to go back out for public comment. So let's save it till the end, or if you guys feel that maybe public comment.
I personally think it'd be good to adopt each one so that we don't get stuck.
Okay.
Like if there's one that's taking too long today, we can put it off to the next meeting.
A point of information, does that mean that each adoption of mission, and from what I had seen, this mission, value, vision, values, and goals, all of that would require an open public comment session for each?
But the public comment sections take like a minute. Unless there's an actual public comment, in which case we really want to hear it.
I defer to your judgment then, Chair.
I think we do the motion and then we ask for public comment, right? Does anyone want to make a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
What's that?
Wait, who was the first?
Andy.
Okay, call for public comment online, moderator.
We are accepting public comment on the motion. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button. For our mobile device users, you may need to find the ellipses button, that ... at the bottom, and cycle through one of 3 pages in order to, or find one of 3 pages in order to find your hand button. We're going to wait just a few seconds to see if we have a comment before moving forward. Seeing no request for comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes.
I'll take a roll call. Dr. Dara Thompson.
Aye.
Dr. Mina Yoon.
Aye.
Dr. Vera Singleton.
Aye.
Dr. Satara Tice.
Aye.
Mr. Andy Yam.
Aye.
And that moves with 6. And that is to a
Aye.
Oh, I'm so sorry. My hand was sitting on your name, Dr. Davidson. I'm so sorry. Dr. Bruce Davidson.
Hi.
Thank you so much. He's like,
Oh my gosh.
I was like, that went really quick. Okay, my apologies. And that was to move to adopt the mission as amended during this meeting.
Great. Now I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to facilitate the values and vision. And again, we went through the workshop with the EO and Raquel here, and they are proposing values, vision, and goals. It up. Okay, so our values. So your values are going to be your kind of guiding principles. They're going to talk about like what the organization's values in terms of like interactions, culture, decisions, and the board operations. They'll communicate your core priorities, how your mission statement is being accomplished, how your stakeholders are treated, the kind of desired culture that you want in your organization, and a new direction. So we have an example here with BPMPT. You can see BPMPT's values: accountability, excellence, inclusiveness, integrity, professionalism, transparency, and trust. So if we look, when we do the values, we always kind of want them to reflect the mission statement. And here you can kind of see how BPMPT's values reflect on this mission statement. We have excellence by providing the qualified and competent, professionalism, transparency and trust, accountability. These all kind of reflect onto the mission statement. So during that mission, vision, values workshop that we did earlier this week, these are the ones that we made edits to. And if I remember correctly, we added diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then here we also made a change to quality healthcare. I believe it was just healthcare earlier, and we added the phrase quality. Okay, yeah, you did have the other one.
Oh, yeah. So previously it was excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, it was just excellent quality, which, what does that mean?
Depends on how you're measuring quality.
Yeah, quality what? So during our meeting earlier this week, we kind of workshopped that and decided quality healthcare kind of made a little bit more sense. Something to note with quality healthcare is that you may have people that perceive that as is that something you can actually, you know, provide. So if you want to change it, you can, but I personally think it's okay how it is. But that is something that people might perceive with that one. And if there are additional values that you would like to add to this, we do have a list that we could also look over. I would advise probably not, because most programs have anywhere between 5 to 7 values, and as you can see, kind of already at the cap here. Having any more kind of muddies the water a little bit, and then makes it, okay, well, what do you don't value? You value everything.
So, just from the point of view of the structure of what we're doing here, and so I was wondering as I was going through this, because I don't remember from before, or maybe I didn't catch it from your comment or your intro, but does it matter what order they're in? Does the order signify one value is sort of higher than another value, or are they all sort of equal?
Personally, I see it as they're more equal. That is sometimes with some organizations, they feel like, okay, we value this one much more, so we'll put it up at the top. Typically, we will just do it in alphabetical order. But if there's something that you would want to prefer to be at the very, very top, you can always move this around.
Sorry, I wanted to make a comment. They're numbered here just so you know how many values you have, because again, we don't recommend having too many values, so anywhere from like 3 to 6 would be golden. but it's okay to have 7. But that's the reason why it's numbered here. But typically, we don't recommend numbering them in the strategic plan because of that reason.
Bullet point.
Bullet point, so people don't think there's a priority. Unless you want to set a priority listing, you can definitely do that.
During our last strategic plan, we do have them numbered. Consumer protection was at the top of that list. And then it was excellent quality, the transparency, integrity, access, and collaboration. So when we were going through these the other day with staff, we knew that consumer protection, I mean, that is the reason that we're here. So we wanted to keep that there for you guys. We wanted to keep access because just the access to healthcare is paramount, and it's such a big issue right now, and trying to close that gap is a big thing for us. And then we also kept that collaboration because we know that naturopathic doctors collaborate a lot with other practitioners, and we knew that that was something that was important to the board back during the last strategic plan. So we went ahead and put that in there this time so that, you know, we thought it was just important to you guys. So if it's any of these you want to change, please feel free to do so. But yeah, like they were saying, we probably wouldn't want to go any more adding to this, but we could replace something if you feel that it's not appropriate anymore.
So I also had the same question had originally around the numbering, and I understand that you know, of course, isn't going to be fine, like in the final version that's going to be numbered. However, I think that internally, that explanation absolutely makes sense. But externally, it may be different, and it may be perceived differently. And so I ask the question then, you know, with your experience, is there a way that we can convey these? And I was thinking of like, whether not just values, but if it was written as core values, right? So that all of these different pieces make up the core of the values that are held by the board, right? Because if I were, even if I put, and I was like just trying to imagine, like if I just put, you know, dots on each one of them, there's still a hierarchical order that you can't avoid when you write out a plan, right? And so, and to your point, right, you know, when you have so many, right, you have almost no choice but to look at things from some sort of order, right? Rather than if I said, these are my 3 core values, right? This is X, Y, and Z. So especially like when I go out into community spaces, I want to be able to say, these are our core values from X to Z, right? And then somehow, if I showed somebody like our strategic plan, that there was a way that we could say that all of which is important, all of this makes up the composition of who we are as individuals, right? So I look to maybe my colleagues or to you all as strategic planners. Is there a way that we can kind of insinuate that they are all equal without giving off a sense of because they were written in that order, right?
Instead of vertical, maybe horizontal in the plan, but I don't know if that's still even.
Well, I think right here what we've done is listed them alphabetically, which is helpful in taking out any hierarchy because it's clear that they're listed.
Just in alphabetical order, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was going to be my not suggestion. I was going to provide you options, whatever you all as board members want to see, definitely. These were in a specific order because you can tell the alphabet order is all, you know, mixed in. So when you look at the list, you feel, okay, consumer protection must be number 1, excellent quality must be number 2, and especially when they're numbered. Now, if they are bulleted, for example, here, and they're in alphabetical order, then it's like, okay, then it's just an alphabetical order list, and then it doesn't even have any numbers, so it must not have any priority because they're just bulleted. So that kind of sends that message, but this is your strategic plan. You can do it either way. If you do want to show a priority, you can definitely put numbers and mix it all up and, you know, prioritize your goals, your values, or in the strategic plan, if you would like to, you can also, where is it? There's a section strategic plan goes mission, vision, values, but the values right before, like right below that title or right after the values, no, probably right below the title, you can say, and you said something that I captured, I was going to type it and I didn't. It was something like these are our core values, not in any or
not in any particular order, but you know, that these are everything that makes up who we are. Right
and
now.
even that, let me write it down.
Don't forget it.
The core values make up who we are, or you know, something like that. If you chose to do that instead, or just keep it in bullets and alphabetical order, I'll leave it up. We'll leave it up to you.
Ask about the core value of transparency. What do you mean by that?
I don't know what you guys mean by it last time.
Transparent, like laws and regulations or requirements for licensure. That's usually what other boards and bureaus use for transparency. But that seems like it kind of doesn't really make sense, but it's something we can take off.
I mean, it seems like a good thing to do. I'm not sure. I just feel like 7's a lot, really, so it's coming in 2. And 4 is kind of like 3 and 1. Just a thought. I wonder what other people think about it.
Well, in a sense, transparency kind of is maybe the opposite of in secrecy, you know. So when decisions are made, they're not made in secret. We're not hiding the reasoning behind the decisions that we make. I guess that's sort of the way it speaks to me, that word.
Oh, transparency is a board, not transparency as a profession.
Right. Correct.
That makes a little more sense.
Because this is the board stuff.
Yeah.
These are the board's values, yeah.
But, you know, I agree. I mean, 7 sort of pushing the upper limit of the number that might, you know, be able to be held in the mind at the same time, kind of a thing.
And transparency might be kind of similar if you're looking to cut any. No. Okay.
Did something change that we're adding DEI in, as that wasn't an implied value?
So, no, not so much as a buzzword. I think that right now the department and I think the state in whole, as just the state agencies and as a whole, want to make sure that they're doing their part in being, you know, having that diversity, equity, and inclusion in kind of their minds when they make these decisions. So as a board, I mean, yes, we've always had this and had that DEI before it was even called DEI and a you know, buzzword, if you will. But it's something that we want to make sure that we are including. And you don't have to include it right there in the values, as long as we are making sure that we are focusing and making sure that those are included in our direction and in our any, you know, things that changes that we might make.
Something you want to keep?
It's not necessary. We just put it.
Well, yeah, I guess how is the concept reflected in other values? I guess if I were to boil that one down, maybe to me the word respect kind of comes to my mind. Respect is what that's really about in many ways, is respecting other, you know, perspectives, other people's values. But that doesn't make fewer values. That just changes the word of that one. But yeah.
We have with some other boards and bureaus, that same argument has been used to not include diversity, equity, inclusion as one of the values. It is already implied. So if you don't want to include it there, that's okay, because once again, it's implied.
On a similar note, when you go back and look at the mission, I also don't kind of see how like collaboration, transparency, and the DEI like is reflected in the mission. And I feel like some of those things are implied. Even the word integrity, you can kind of mix that in with the DEI sentiment.
Stuff here might kind of reflect DEI, since you know there's a lot of accessibility things with inclusion and diversity. That's reflected there. As far as, you said collaboration also?
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of those things are
implied, and it doesn't seem like it's something we're overtly responsible for in our regulating of medicine here.
I think who exactly are you collaborating with? Is it the public or is it the doctors?
Collaborate. Well, we as the board, we collaborate with other boards, you know, the medical board, the osteopathic medical board, the RN board. So we collaborate a lot with other boards, just like we did with BBNPT when we came up with the new laws that allow NDs to supervise and provide orders to LVN. So we have done a lot in terms of collaboration. I think that is a big point, but that is something that you guys can remove if you do not feel that that is one of the values or one of those driving forces of us. I mean, it's not something that we do all the time, but it's something that we do, you know, as needed, of course.
I think because we're a smaller board and we don't have as much legislative power as some of the larger boards, the collaboration is actually something that's really important for us, personally. Yeah, I think the ones that stand out to me are actually transparency and integrity, which seem kind of vague.
Kind of what?
Vague.
Oh,
So it seem like good things, but they seem a little vague as far as our core values, but I don't feel particularly strongly about it.
I feel very strongly about integrity.
Having it in there. Okay.
I feel like integrity also encompasses transparency and the DEI.
Okay. In that case, should we just full on remove transparency then? Okay. Wait, are we also removing DEI?
To keep the,
okay.
Are we including respect? Also,
or could you use respect?
Well,
DEI was thrown out as a alternative to DEI.
Yeah.
Since DEI might seem like a buzzword to some people.
I know, I feel like it's kind of a necessary buzzword right now, personally.
It is, and just remember that this is going to be a, 4 or 5 year plan, so is it going to be a buzzword in 5 years? So it's just one of those things that as a board, what is important to you to make sure that the people that we are, you know, providing services to and protecting, that they know what your guys' values are as a board. So I think choosing the most important values as the naturopathic board would probably be the most beneficial, right? So it's just to use buzzword because it's a buzzword or because it's the thing that, you know, everybody's really trying to get in and on you know, that equal part is good to practice, but do we necessarily need to have it as a stated value if it's already implied in other places? So that's something just to think about.
The terminology has a lot of meaning beyond its use as its frequent use nowadays.
Right.
And so that's kind of what I guess gets in the direction of the buzzword thing, because it's used so frequently these days. But isn't there also, I mean, should we be aware of, or should we express awareness of the governor's desire to ensure that these concepts are fully supported everywhere?
I mean, yeah, I think it is important.
Sounds like I'm hearing that, and we'll take out respect and then keep diversity, equity, and inclusion. Yeah? Okay.
And does anyone have a problem with removing transparency?
I think integrity kind of covers that.
Exactly, yeah. I think that's better.
Okay. Goodbye. All right, so these are your values. Do these all look good? Now we have 6, which is perfect.
Perfect.
Great.
And they'll be bulleted,
yes.
so to emphasize their
they're equal.
They'll be bulleted
They're
in.
all our core values.
Yes.
Or maybe even a different way of showing this information in the final strategic plan. Again, bullet format rather not top down or down up.
Maybe 2 columns
A
of
giant Venn diagram.
Or like, I was thinking like there's like a bubble map or something. So,
yeah.
All right. I move that we accept these proposed values.
Second, as amended.
Yes, that's amended.
Second.
I had my fun already.
Okay.
I did my good.
All right, and I will go ahead and call roll call vote. Oh, I'm so sorry. Public comment. Keep bringing
Wait, moderator, can we call for public comment?
Absolutely. We're now accepting public comment via WebEx on the motion. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. For our mobile device users, please tap the ... the ellipses button at the bottom if you're having trouble finding your hand button. We're going to give you just a few seconds to see if you have a request for public comment before moving forward. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes. Great, and I will go ahead and now take a roll call vote to adopt the proposed values with the amendments that were provided here today. Dr. Dara Thompson.
Aye.
Dr. Mina Yoon.
Aye.
Dr. Vera Singleton.
Aye.
Dr. Satara Tice.
Aye.
Dr. Bruce Davidson.
Aye.
And Mr. Andy Yam.
Aye.
And that moves with 6. Almost.
It's conferred upon me.
I called doctor in a board meeting when I was moderating it, and I was like, oh, okay, I didn't know I got promoted. Hey, so next we'll be working on our vision statement. And your vision statement is going to provide meaning in kind of illustrates what a successful future. So you can kind of think of your vision statement as what your organization is once you've accomplished your mission statement. Very lofty, kind of almost like you can kind of think of it as like, this is utopia. We've accomplished everything that we wanted to do. I kind of already said all this, kind of what you hope to achieve. For an effective vision statement, you want it to be very concise, inspirational, and easy to understand, very short and kind of like snappy, almost like a catchphrase. And this is a formula that we usually follow for this. Like Elle had mentioned earlier, not necessarily have to follow this to a T, but it does provide help when you're workshopping mission statement. So we have an end result, who it impacts, and then what the benefits are. So if we look at BVMPTs, their vision statement is access to the highest quality patient care for all. Very short, very aspirational, snappy. We like that. So we have it broken down here. The end result is access to who we impact, all. And then the benefits is highest quality patient care. BVMPT's vision also reflects this mission statement. Their mission statement says that they want to serve and protect with licensing, and by doing so, and completing that, they provide access to the highest quality patient care for everyone. So here we have the proposed vision statement. Naturopathic doctors provide crucial healthcare services and close the healthcare gap in California.
What was the previous?
Let's see. Naturopathic physicians practice to the full extent of their training to provide collaborative and crucial healthcare services to California consumers.
Oh.
Yes. Now, when we were, let me give you a little bit of background on how we came up with this new one. And I know that when we were thinking about vision statement during our last strategic plan, you know, everybody was gung-ho about, well, we are naturopathic physicians everywhere else except California because we can't use the term physician. So you guys chose to use naturopathic physicians because if, you know, was the perfect world and we had scope like everybody else, we would be able to use that term. So because I'm trying to be a realist, and I just don't see that happening here in California anytime soon, and crazier things have happened, but I'm just trying to be very realistic about this, and give you guys a vision that is very realistic and maybe obtainable. I went ahead and changed it to the naturopathic doctors. Please feel free to change it back if that is something that you're strongly, you know, supporting. But that is why the change of that was made. So I just wanted to give you some background on that portion of it.
Go ahead and change it back to physician. Personal opinion, but I think it speaks to what the discussion that we had about the budget earlier and the scope expansion. And if this is something that we're hoping for and going to put resources towards in terms of money and time, we should keep that aspiration no matter how lofty it is.
So we'll change doctors to physicians?
Well, I disagree, though. I just think that of all those things that I would like us to accomplish, I feel like just trying to get that term for me is not that, it's not as important. And I feel like right now, as far as our current vision, we're not naturopathic physicians. And if it's not going to happen anytime soon, we don't want to create controversy just over a term. So I like doctors. I'm perfectly fine. I practiced in Washington where I was called a physician there, and I feel perfectly fine being called a naturopathic doctor here. I feel like we have so much bigger things to tackle. But the only other comment I have is I don't think we should be writing it in past tense, and we should just write change provided to provide and closed to close.
Second that.
I agree. I agree.
Second that too. Because this is a future statement, correct? That this is the attainable future that you seek. So
that's how I got it as well. There's just been some kind of guidance to put it in because it's something that you're wishing for, and how did it go? Something similar to that. But anyway, I am with you guys. When it comes to the grammar thing, I'm like, why is it like that? That doesn't sound right. So I'm with you. I would take the tenses out and leave it as a present tense.
I also like this because our role is protection of the consumers. And one of the things that, you know, been on the board for a while. And one of the things that we have come back to over and over again is one of the only reasons we as a board talk about scope is because it affects consumer care to such a huge degree. It's like one of the things that sets it apart, right? And so I do think that if we're going to say, like, what would be the most important thing that naturopathic doctors could do for the consumers of California to provide more comprehensive care, because there is such a gap in care. I mean, I had a patient who told me that it's going to take her 6 months to see a primary care doctor. What if you have an emergency? And it just overloads the emergency medical system. So it's a really, really big issue in the state. I agree. Anyway, I'm just saying I like the statement for those reasons, that it encompasses these deeper issues here as a profession. That, you know, as a board, we need to look at for, you know, protecting the consumers. That this profession has the ability to really do some good in the state. Yeah.
You know, this might be unpopular opinion, but I'm just not a fan of this sentence at all.
Okay.
And the reason why I believe so, and I'm going to do something that I hate, essentially say I don't like something without sort of a fix to it. And I still formulate my thoughts around this, but I believe in the short time that I've gone to understand this profession, that naturopathic doctors are already closing the gap, right? That this is not necessarily a future, but rather the present that we are currently in at the moment. You all do provide crucial health care services similar to that patient. You do so now, right? You already proved that, I think, during the pandemic, in my opinion, my understanding of what the historical work of naturopathic doctors is in the state. And so I guess I'm curious because I wonder if my guess is that the future of the practice of naturopathic medicine and doctors is not completely secured based on whether a board will function in the future is my concern. And so that's essentially, it's like, I think that you already all do this. I don't see how this can be the future when it's already being done now.
For the physician's part.
I'm sorry, I don't have enough knowledge on the physician's part to really speak on that. But
well, I think it's that when we come down to a consumer standpoint, if they are choosing between a naturopathic doctor and other choices, the first thing they're going to do is put down their insurance card and ask, is there coverage? And because there's no coverage or parity, we can't close the healthcare gap. We are all boutique doctors, cash pay, for the most part, in the state. And that's really hard for inclusion and equity for everyone to have access to our services. If everyone had access and we were covered by insurance, this would be a true statement, but it's not, unfortunately.
Maybe we shift focus to maybe garnering the ability to have insurance cover naturopathic medicine. I mean, wasn't there a law passed that there was no prejudice in healthcare, but yet, you know, here we are 10 years later, naturopathic doctors still can't get full coverage. I mean, they do have Blue Cross and Blue Shield that will pay reimbursables for certain things, but not for everything. Medi-Cal will pay for a visit. No, I'm sorry, not for the visit, but they will pay for certain services for naturopathic doctors. So there are some portions of insurance that will provide some coverage, but definitely not just put down the insurance card and you guys are the ones that are sending it in just like they do at a, you know, MD's office or whatever. So, I mean, if that's where you want to shift the focus, I absolutely am okay with it. But that's just kind of my.
Just kind of wrote off a option 2 based on Singleton's comments. Maybe naturopathic medicine is accessible to all and covered by healthcare insurance. In a perfect future, this would be
I think they got a bit nuance, I think.
Nuance?
Yeah, but if I could just kind of share as a consumer, again, I'm not a naturopathic doctor. I feel like I say this many times. I'm not a naturopathic doctor, but I think that I have immense respect for all those who are in the healing arts, right? In terms of how much education, how much time you all took to get to the point to be able to practice and essentially provide these services. And that includes for, you know, MD, all the other specifications. But I think that what I would hope is that as a consumer of healthcare, I go to the dentist or the doctor, that I can choose, right? I can choose to go see a certain physician or see a naturopathic doctor as my primary care physician, right? I can choose that, and it is not an unnecessarily burdensome thing to do. Like what you were just talking about, Dr. Singleton, just like cash, like that is an undue burden on the consumer. I think a disservice to the consumer, right, for not being able to make a choice should they prefer that care because they feel it is best for them. So that is the way that I have looked at this, and that I like, again, being on the board for a short time, the way that I'm hoping that would be the future, where I as a consumer could say, yeah, I want a naturopathic doctor to be my primary care physician. I want that person to be providing me care, and I can access that equitably. So.
Amazing. So first of all, I don't think that the vision statement needs to be long. So when I look at the sentence that says naturopathic medicine is accessible to all, I'm like, that seems good.
And accessible is kind of the goal. Like we go back to the original formula, accessible is the goal, like and that's a huge thing, right? Accessible. The only thing, like if we're looking at what we've just been talking about right now, the only thing that I would say is there a way to say concisely and not go down a rabbit hole, accessible to all, like to the full extent of our training, right? Because that comes back to the scope, right? We want naturopathic medicine as trained to be accessible to all Californians, because right now it's not. I mean, we probably have to work on that wording a little bit, but you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, something I would probably put full scope of naturopathic medicine, because the full scope of naturopathic medicine would be as you were trained. So I think if we just said full scope, providing full scope naturopathic we can't use ensure. Supporting full scope naturopathic, let me think. Sorry?
The full scope.
The full scope.
And we would recommend something like just going straight into it. So the full scope of naturopathic medicine accessible to all is a good vision. When you start adding like support, provide, like ensuring,
right.
It turns more into a mission.
Right.
Right. No, I actually really like that.
Aren't they with naturopathic medicine?
I will defer to my colleagues on that.
Yes. Well, the only reason that I would say yes to that, and again, this is to you guys, but because in California, the lay naturopaths do not practice naturopathic medicine. They practice naturopathy, and there is a difference when you really break it down, although there's not if you go historically. But here in California, there is a difference between those two. And because of that, I think naturopathic medicine encompasses just those naturopathic doctors or physicians, maybe down the line if we ever get that lucky. So I think that this is okay, but again, go to you guys as the board members.
So you're saying naturopathic medicine is currently a protected term?
It's not, but the naturopaths cannot practice medicine, right? They'd have to be a naturopathic doctor to practice naturopathic medicine in California. Other states are having this issue too, and that's why Idaho did what Idaho did. So I think that we should really use that naturopathic medicine term, but again, that's back to you guys if you wanted to. I don't know how you would use this statement using naturopathic doctor unless you kind of reworded it. I mean, I guess you could. The full scope of naturopathic doctors is accessible to all. I mean, I guess you could.
Much to add. Closing the healthcare gap.
Like that part of the Vision 1. I didn't like that part.
Like the healthcare gap is so huge. Like we have like a tiny bit of the gap.
The solution.
Yeah.
Because I think, and that's why I was struggling with it.
I was struggling with it too.
Because it's such a massive. But I know that NDs play their part in that work.
Is it fair to say that that part is specifically related to primary care? Or do you feel that's too limiting?
That's what we're trained for.
Yeah, so should that, I mean, you were saying the gap is so huge and our contribution is more limited. So, I mean, maybe using primary care is a way of being more accurate in characterizing the gap, but again, that's more words.
Are you saying accessible to all as primary care?
But I also see a lot of our colleagues are also not in the role of primary care.
Right, we've got a lot of FABNOs and
specialists.
So,
That's not
I feel like that.
necessarily,
I don't like it shorter. It's the vision.
Yeah.
Support that.
Sweet and short and concise.
want to see it?
The whole sentence.
Like that? Oh, you want to see without the... I was going to mention, Andrew, you mentioned, I think at the beginning, something about the gap is already closed, like the crucial healthcare services are already being provided and the healthcare gap is already closed, then why?
For closing, I think.
Closing. I was saying that I think that naturopathic doctors
what's already being
are working, are part of the solution and are doing so at this current moment.
Okay.
As a naturopathic doctor practices,
right.
Thereby they help in the effort to close out. But I mean, the closing the healthcare gap is such a large term. I mean, there's a lot of other, I think, components that are go even beyond talking the realm of like health insurance.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't know, maybe it's just throwing a wrench in things. I somewhat feel like closing a healthcare gap is somewhat implied by having it be accessible to everyone.
Right.
I don't know.
It does feel redundant.
I think it is because again, from a consumer standpoint, there's the issue of accessibility of whether a naturopath is functioning as a primary care or functioning as a specialist. And in either case, they would be closing the gap in their respective areas. I personally think it's necessary to, because this is a vision statement, we're closing the gap everywhere. It's not just about primary care. I personally, I just think it's something that needs to be said on the table. This is what we're doing. Because that's what we did during the pandemic.
But if we rearrange it by saying to close the healthcare gap by providing comprehensive full scope of naturopathic medicine to all, or something like that.
Sorry, can you repeat it? To close the healthcare gap?
By providing the full scope.
Or full scope of naturopathic medicine to all Californians.
Do this if you want to see them preview.
I think we can use providing as the board. Like I know a lot of us are licensed naturopathic doctors, but as the board, we're not providing it. Like I think we need to use a different word. I mean, otherwise. I mean, it's almost like allowing, but I don't really like that word either.
Practicing to the full scope.
I think the board isn't practicing.
Right. So it's like we're supporting or allowing or we're doing.
I'll just quickly wrap up my comment there. It's just that I would say that I like that one for the reason being that, just as a reminder to folks, is that I think that the majority of people who will end up reading the vision statement, who actually need to be the ones who hear the vision statement, in my opinion, are folks who are not going to be naturopathic doctors that I don't think understand or are able to fully, I think, grasp what naturopathic medicine is and does for sort of the system of healthcare and healthcare, provision. So this is part of the problem. Right. Which is where, I hear, as you all said, right, this is like, if these things that we're talking about here, the values, vision, the mission, right? These are like one in the chamber options, right? That if somebody says, hey, like, what is it that you do? Or I can just say, look, full scope of, what we do is that we work towards the future where the full scope of naturopathic medicine is accessible. And that's going to invite questions. That's going to invite people to find out and be curious, like, what is the full scope? Why is it not accessible to all? Why do you even want that as a future? Like, what is the good in that? So my observation and my belief stands with that, but I'm definitely open to feedback from my colleagues.
at the facilitator view here, I wanted to share that, not share, but confirm with what you said, the reader. You have to think about the reader, who's the target audience. And the strategic plan, anyone can see, any, like professional associations, schools, students. But at the end of the day, who are you doing all this for? The consumer. And if they read it, would they understand what it means by closing the healthcare gap? Is there meaning to it? Is it too much technicality, jargon? Is there too much of the background that they don't know, or will they understand and feel inspired by the full scope of naturopathic medicine is accessible to all? Is that easier to understand? Is that something that they can, jump on board and be inspired by?
There's a portion I feel like is missing to this vision that I would think. One is in California, people knowing about naturopathic medicine to begin with. And also people knowing that we are primary care doctors and we're accepted as, we are kind of in that prestige in some way. I don't know if this would work, but I'm just kind of figuring out maybe like the full scope of naturopathic medicine is embraced and accessible to all somehow, which is also making us like kind of accepted already into the healthcare.
What about the full scope of primary care naturopathic medicine is embraced or is accessible to all? You guys you are primary care.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Embraced. Sorry, did I capture that correctly?
I believe you did, yeah.
And just throwing this out there, that your mission, vision, values, goals, all of them work as a set. So if something's not addressed, for example, the educational part, know that that could be addressed in your goal area of outreach or whatever you decide to be in your goal areas, and then your objectives. It's all of it works together. So you can definitely include more clarifying terms in the vision, but know that all of them work together to communicate a message.
Right. Because we can definitely work on ways to assist and support that closing of the healthcare gap, within our goals and what our objectives. So if we don't have it in our vision, it can definitely be shown that it's still important to you guys as a board because it's part of your goals and objectives as a strategic plan. So just know that if it's not in the vision, it doesn't mean that it's not important to you as the board. It's being dealt with within the whole strategic plan and your guys' direction as a board. I hope that helps.
Yeah, because sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was thinking out loud, sorry.
So are we okay with the second one here with full scope of primary care and embraced and accessible?
Is there anything with the word embraced, legal, or?
I'm not going to get this trouble as in, okay, let's see. Let me see if I can find another.
I still am not crazy about primary care there, again, because
as a consumer, I like 3 because to me it's closing the gap and it's ensuring that naturopathic medicine is using full scope, which can be primary care, as well as specialties.
No, even if it's not full scope, though, there's still primary care. That is not.
But that's not
that
a vision,
is separate from
right?
Full scope. I'm sorry.
That wouldn't be the vision because the vision is future. If they're primary care right now, that's right now. This is the future, so it would be healthcare closing the gap and to be able to use their entire full scope. That's how I see it as a consumer.
I personally stand by the original one, which is like most simplest, but I
Thank you, Andy.
I will say though, my colleagues feel really strongly about it. I don't see.
I'm also wondering if this is something we can decide today, given the time constraints of people having to fly back to Southern California. Because it seems like we're really in the weeds with this one, and we have other things we need to cover, and we might need to table it for our next meeting.
Why don't we, and I think if the only thing we have left is the vision at the strategic planning session, I think that's way better than the mission and the value. So
doing it all together.
yeah, and because we've already done motions on the first two and adopted those, I think we would be okay if we tabled this. If you guys were still not okay with these options. Again, the first option that we brought to you today was naturopathic doctors provide crucial healthcare services and close the healthcare gap in California. So if you're not okay with the first version that was brought to you, the second version or the third version that's up there, let's go ahead, and if it's okay with you guys, I think tabling it and working more on it when we have more time is more appropriate.
I'm in agreement with that.
For public comment.
I'd like to ask for public comment, moderator.
Absolutely. We are once again open for public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of your screen. For our mobile device users, remember that you have 3 different screens and only one of them has a hand button. So you may need to click the ellipses button, the ... in order to find the hand button. We're going to give you just a few seconds to request a comment before we move forward. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we will bring the 3 options, the vision statement, and then determine there if an additional option or refining any of those will work. So now we're moving on to the goal areas. And first we'll look at the goals themselves and then the definitions. So starting off with the goals help organize your overall efforts. Like think of these buckets of stuff that the board does or of work they have to do. They describe a desired set of conditions, and they typically address things by topics or day-to-day functions. Goal areas are long-term. They're broadly scoped, and they're general in direction. They don't provide any specific instructions of, create an action plan or create reciprocity. It's not specific. It's very broad in direction. Effective goals are short, they're accurate, they're descriptive. Here's an example from BBMPTs. These are their 6 goals: administration, legislation, regulation, licensing, enforcement, educational oversight, and outreach. Again, it's those buckets of areas of things that they work on as a board. And goals also have some sort of reflection of its mission. For example, here, the mission of the board is to license qualified and competent vocational psychiatry and psychiatric nurses. So we have the licensing, we have enforcement. There's an educational oversight piece to their licensing. They have an admin that's behind the scenes. That's the admin to run the board. So again, Rebecca and Raquel did meet up earlier this week and are proposing these goal areas. So there's licensing, a new goal area of continuing education, enforcement, an update to legislation and regulations, now calling it laws and regulations to make it more accessible, trying to support the DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion by making the language more accessible. The 5th goal area is board administration. It was just administration, but again, for the sake of clarity, added the word term or the term board administration. There's also another option that they wanted to give to you all today, which was board operational management. And then lastly, stakeholder outreach. It was outreach and education, but they believe the education part should be separated out to continuing education. Here's the second goal area, and the outreach should be more specific. So they added the term stakeholder in front of it. So how do you all feel about these goal areas? Do you have any refinements you would like to make?
Would it be possible to change to just to education, because that would encompass continuing education in addition to educating the public and the licensees?
Well, that's where I thought outreach would be, right? The outreach to the public.
Yeah, and that's kind of what was in our head too, is that we wanted to kind of break that out, is the outreach and education, like the educational piece of what naturopathic medicine is, who's allowed to do it here in California is one thing. And then when we were talking about education in terms of credentialing CE, approving CE, that type of thing, or, approving schools that may, that we may accept. Those are things that would be under just education as it is to the practice of the naturopathic medicine.
So under outreach, it would include stakeholders and the public? Right.
Yes, it does.
Well, do we consider the public stakeholders?
We do if they are a consumer that goes to naturopathic doctors, then they are a stakeholder as well, because then they've got a stake in, what naturopathic doctors are allowed to do here. So yeah, I think it's implied, I hope.
And I think the continuing education part for me kind of speaks to the idea of like lifelong learning, right? Which I know is very important, I think, in a number of other fields as well. So personally, I actually happen to like all of these. I have no comments.
Okay. Remember, fine.
In number 4, are we just talking about the titles or the language within?
Right now, just the titles. We'll go into language in just a moment. Yeah. Just the titles. Are you all good? Should we move forward? Yes, I see agreement. Okay. So, any comments?
Oh, yes. Comment, please. Moderator?
My apologies. We are once again open for public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. For our mobile device users, please hit the ellipses button, the ... if you're having trouble finding your hand button. We're going to give everyone just a few seconds to make a public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, please.
So now we will move on to the goal statements, so those definitions that you were referring to. So the goal statements, they describe the purpose of that goal. So now we're taking that bucket, we're defining what exactly do we mean by continuing education or licensing. They explain how the goal will help the organization achieve its mission. So goal statements can also help staff, guide and direct staff, new staff, current staff, and also help stakeholders, all stakeholders, consumers, licensees, professional associations, schools, understand the efforts of the board. And effective goal statements are inclusive. They're I want to say comprehensive, but then it kind of contradicts the concise part. But they contain all of the work that the board does. So it's just very inclusive, but it's well. It's simple. Again, we want our stakeholders to be able to understand what they're reading, so making the language very accessible and the concept very accessible. We have a formula as well. It doesn't have to follow this order. Just basically the components. You definitely want the action, what the board does, a description of that goal area, and the end results. Sometimes the description and the end results mixed in together. So BVNCT, here's their goal statements. Again, as an example, we just wanted to carry one board throughout the examples. So that's why you see them repeatedly. So their administration, they provide effective and efficient quality customer service, legislation, regulation, develop, maintain, and defend statutes, regulations, including their Practice Act, Enforcement, prevent, reduce, or remediate unlawful and or unsafe activities by license, and then their titles there that pose a threat to the health, safety, and welfare of the public. Educational oversight, protect the public by reviewing, approving, and auditing academic programs in accordance with the Practice Act and the law. Again, they're very specific with what they're doing. Outreach, educate all stakeholders about the practice and regulation of the professional license, and then again, their title there. So again, these are the proposed goal statements. They have been refined. We do have the original if you want us to display them, but here we're just showing the final clean version. So if we want to zoom in a little bit, if we can. So the licensing definition or goal statement here, the board establishes and promotes licensing standards to protect consumers and allow reasonable access to naturopathic medicine. Any feedback, any refinements, any thoughts? Does this capture, do you think, the board's role and efforts in licensing? Okay. And how about continuing education? The board reviews and approves continuing education standards to promote excellence in the practice of naturopathic medicine and public safety. Does this capture what the board does and explains it to the consumer or the member of the public who may not have the technical knowledge? Any opposition or any refinement? Your next goal area, enforcement. The board prevents, reduces, or remediates unlawful or unsafe activities by licensed and unlicensed individuals that violate the Practice Act and pose a threat to health, safety, or welfare of the public. Again, do you think this is what the board does, the role it's in its effort? Yes. The fourth goal area, laws and regulations. The board reviews, amends, and creates laws and clarifying regulations to support its mandates and mission of consumer protection.
I was wondering, should mandates and missions both be plural as they are here? We have a mission statement, that's our mission. And the mandates, mandates is what the law says we have to do? Is that what that means? So maybe there's multiple mandates, but one mission? I don't know, I'm just asking.
I agree. Mission.
I would agree with that as well.
Yeah, we can take out, we can definitely take out the S there on mission for its mandates, because we have more than one mandate. We have several mandates, but we do have one mission and mission of consumer protection. So yeah, absolutely, I agree with that statement.
So keep mandates? Keep mandates plural and then mission. Any additional feedback here?
Good catch.
Next goal area.
Sorry, can we go to enforcement?
Yes.
Do we need to specify naturopathic doctors instead of licensed and unlicensed individuals?
Do you want to say?
Or is it already implied because we're the naturopathic board?
Yeah, because we are the licensed individual.
Yeah, because we can't say, I mean, we would have to say licensed naturopathic doctors and unlicensed
individuals.
Yeah, I think it just flows better this way, because I think it is implied. We only
yeah, okay.
Everybody else feels comfortable that it's implied, or do you rather spell it out? Okay. The fifth goal area, board administration. The board efficiently utilizes its resources and personnel through effective leadership to meet its objectives of excellent customer service and consumer protection.
So objectives follow goals, right? So, I mean, we're not using that word in its formal sense here, I guess. It's more, because we're not talking about objectives today, but I heard them referred to as part of our strategic planning process. So we've got goals, and then we've got objectives. So is that what this word is referring to, those objectives that we haven't articulated in this document yet?
I'll leave it off to you. It could encompass the objectives that will follow in the strategic plan, and it could also encompass any general objective, but I'll leave it up to you how you would like it to be worded.
So when I came up with this statement, I think in my head, I was thinking of the objectives as a regulatory entity. What is our objectives? To keep the consumer safe, to make sure that we are licensing properly, to make sure that we are enforcing the laws and the statutes. So that's where my head was when I came up with that statement, but please feel free to massage that message if you think that it's unclear, or that it may need to be a little bit more clarified.
Objects, purposes, aims, points, ideas, goals, intentions, intent.
Well, are we really referring back up to our mission or our vision here? I mean, I like excellent customer service, definitely, but actually we haven't really mentioned that explicitly before, and we want it for sure, I think.
And again, if I'm just as a friendly reminder, again, if it wasn't mentioned before, these are a set mission, vision, values, and goals. If it wasn't mentioned before, perhaps it was either like too it was too general to specify anywhere else, but this is specifically talking about the board's administration, and it fits very well in terms of this is the board's customer service goal area.
And the reason I use the excellent customer service is I think we're one of the only boards that still answer our phones, and we don't have a message tree, and I think we usually get back to most of the emails within a 24-hour period, business day, of course. So I think to top that off, we license applicants within 7 days of all their stuff being in our office, which I don't think any other board can say. So with that being said, I really wanted to hit home that we do provide excellent service. I mean, it's really, especially for the size of our board and our staff resources, I think we do a really good job there. And we can definitely make sure that we encompass that, or that we point to that and touch on that within our objectives once we start really getting into the plan, to make sure that we continue providing that type of level of service. Just even as we grow, we just want to make sure that we continue providing that. So
provide is a word that just jumped out at me in what you just said, because you used it several times in that statement. So should we say to provide excellent customer service and consumer protection?
Yeah, absolutely. So the board efficiently utilizes its resources and personnel through effective leadership
to provide
excellent service. So remove meet its objectives or keep meets its objectives?
Change to provide.
Provide. Okay.
No, provide.
Provide with no one singular, but in meets its meets its objectives of excellence. Oh, okay, I see. Part of it. So remove meets its objective and just to provide excellent customer service
and consumer.
Yeah.
Can you provide consumer protection though?
But we do provide consumer protection.
I wasn't sure if that was like one of those, like insure.
Like the vague, like you don't
that's
specifically directly provide it, but you promote.
Exactly, yeah.
That's why I have a question mark.
Enforce.
So does that look good, the statement here, as is?
Okay, I'm gonna there.
And again, Rebecca mentioned a really good point here that I would like to emphasize, that when the statement, the definition, it really does influence your objectives. So when you're building those objectives in June, I believe it's in June, when you're doing the strategic planning session and building specific objectives, when you're building it, you're going to be inspired by the statements of the goal area. So you're reading, the board efficiently utilizes its resources, personnel through effective leadership to provide excellent customer service and consumer protection. And when you're developing those objectives, you'll have the environmental scan report in front of you with all the trends of all the feedback that we received. But not only that, you'll have the the goal statement in front of you and say, okay, here are the trends, here are the issues, and here's our goal. Putting that together, what are some of the objectives we need to build? So it does go back to what Rebecca mentioned, that it will inspire and influence your objectives. So we're good with the statement for board admin. Okay, and the last goal area is stakeholder outreach. The board educates and engages stakeholders about the safe practice and regulation of naturopathic medicine. Any feedback, any assignments? Rebecca and Raquel did a really good job. Yay! Which is not surprising. They're especially, and that's one of the great things that I like when the boards and the programs do decide to do it in-house and then bring it to the board, because the executives, the management, the staff, they have firsthand experience and knowledge of what it is to run the organization. So sharing that with the board members and then having the board members give their input, I think is really great combination to create effective set of mission, vision, values, and goals.
All right, and seeing no public members in the room, we'd like to open for public comment online.
We are once again open for public comment online. If you would like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of your screen. For our mobile device users, you may need to tap the ellipses button, the ... in order to find the appropriate page with the hand button. We're going to give everyone just a few seconds to make a request, and then we'll move forward. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, thank you. Okay, I've been informed that we have a hard stop at 3 for people to make their flights. So we're just gonna work on getting through the rest of our items here. If anything can't be covered, we'll have to move it to another meeting.
I'm sorry, should we have a motion now?
We are. I just wanted to let everybody know. And
all right, were you doing a motion?
I will so move, yes.
Right.
Second.
All right, so this is going to be roll call for move of adopt goals with amendments made during today's meeting. Dr. Dara Thompson.
Aye.
Dr. Mina Yoon.
Aye.
Dr. Vera Singleton.
Aye.
Dr. Satara Tice.
Aye.
Mr. Andy Yam.
Aye.
And Dr. Bruce Davidson.
Aye.
And that moves with 6.
Okay. We're going back to the items we haven't covered. Item number 3 is the board chair welcome, discussion, and possible action. Welcome, everyone. I think that the discussion and possible action has been covered already. Do I need to ask for public comment on this? There's no public members in the room, so we'd like to open for public comment online.
We are open for public comment online. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. For our mobile device users, please tap the ellipses button, the ... if you're having trouble finding that hand button. We're going to give everyone just a few seconds to make their request before we move forward. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes. Our next item is agenda item 4, which is review and possible approval of board meeting minutes. We had a board meeting on December 14th, a more lengthy one, and then a short one on December 27th. Rebecca sent out some meeting minutes for both of those, which everyone had a chance to review. Does anyone have questions or amendments to the meeting minutes for December 14th?
I noted the possibility of 1 or 2 typos that I wish to comment on the minutes of the 14th. On the 4th page, in the last full paragraph, the enforcement unit closed 3, I'm assuming that means cases, and sent 1 case to the Attorney General's office for filing. 3 cases and sent 1 case, maybe? Then in the minutes of the 28th, on the 2nd page near the top, the board members reviewed the draft proposal and approved the meeting minutes. So in fact, we're approving the draft proposal, right?
Thank you.
So just take out those words, I guess, and approve it.
you. Were there any other comments on the meeting minutes from the 14th?
I think there's also under enforcement statistics, under the unlicensed activity, providing the third bullet is providing diagnosis. The it's capital D for diagnosis. Could be little d.
I'm sorry, where, page 4?
Page, I'm sorry, I don't have page.
Gotcha, I see it. I will go ahead and that change. Thank you.
Just a informational question. I see that in 4A with expiring appointments, the service of Dr. Greta D'Amico, who held the role of vice chair. What is now then the procedure given that she is vacated while holding an officer position?
We will have to officer elections for that. Right now, it's a vacant position, but in order to do so, we have to bring it to a board meeting. So during the next board meeting, we'll actually have the, so we'll be doing elections. The following board meeting, we'll be doing nominations during the next one. So I'll be providing everybody with everybody's background. Of course, you can always look and see the bios. And then, of course, if anybody's interested, they can nominate somebody else. So.
Anyone like to move to adopt the meeting minutes from December 14th?
Moved.
Second, anyone?
Second.
Thank you. Public comments?
A point of information, if I may, before we open for public comment. Is it move as amended since there were additions?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is move as amended. Thank you.
I already had it on my paper. Thanks. Okay.
Okay, so there are no public members present here. For public comment online?
We are open for public comment on the meeting minutes. There's a motion to approve as amended for December 14th. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button. For our mobile device users, if you're having trouble finding that hand button, use the ellipses button, the ... at the bottom. We're going to give everyone just a couple of seconds to make the request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, thank you. All right, we're going to do a vote.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to do a roll call vote to approve the 12/14/23 minutes as amended. Dr. Dar Thompson.
Aye.
Dr. Mina Yoon.
Aye.
Dr. Vera Singleton. Aye. Dr. Satar Tice.
I'm not sure if I'm supposed to abstain if I wasn't there.
Oh, I think you are.
Okay.
Mr. Andy Yam.
Yes.
And Dr. Bruce Davidson.
Aye.
And that moves with 5.
All right, so moving on to the meeting minutes from December 27th. Did anyone else have any corrections, questions, or comments on those meeting minutes? All right, so we are going to, no public members are present here. We're going to open for public comment online.
We are open for public comment. Has there been a motion?
No, actually, there hasn't. Thank you.
I will move, Madam.
Oh, go ahead. I move to approve the minutes from December 27th.
I'd like to offer my second.
Perfect.
And I believe that is as amended because there is.
As amended. Yes. All right, I will go ahead and take a roll call vote. Dr. Dar Thompson.
Public comment, please.
Oh, public comment.
Thank you.
We are open for public comment on the motion. If you'd like to make a comment, please tap that hand button at the bottom of your screen. Our mobile device users should hit the ellipses button, the dot, if they're having trouble finding the hand button. We're going to give everyone just a couple of seconds to make their request before moving forward. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'll take a roll call vote to approve the 12/27/23 minutes with the amendments made today. Dr. Dar Thompson.
Aye.
Dr. Mina Yoon.
Aye.
Dr. Vera Singleton.
Aye.
Dr. Satara Tice. Mr. Andy Yam.
Aye.
And Dr. Bruce Davidson.
Aye.
Thank you, and that moves with 5.
Wonderful. Our next agenda item is item number 6, discussion and possible action of the executive officer's report.
Okay.
Turning this over to Rebecca Mitchell.
Thank you. And I'll make this really brief. I know that we're limited on time here today, so I just wanted to give a couple of updates on board member vacancies, staffing, licensing statistics, enforcement statistics, and board member training. The board member vacancies, the board is still experiencing appointment vacancies. Currently, the following board member positions are vacant: 1 professional ND member and 1 physician and surgeon member. Dr. Satara Tice, ND, was appointed to a professional member vacancy by Governor Newsom on February 29th, 2024. Welcome. And Dr. Tice has received her Bachelor of Science in Animal Physiology and Neuroscience from the University of California, San Diego, her doctorate from Naturopathic Medicine, from Bastyr University in 2009. After she completed a 3-year family medicine residency in Marysville, Washington in 2012, she moved back to her hometown in Fresno, California, where she is currently seeing patients at her private medical practice. Dr. Tice served on the board of the California Naturopathic Doctor Association and co-chaired the Professional Development and Public Affairs Committees. She also served a 2-year term as president of the CNDA from 2014 to 2016. She was a founding director of the Endocrinology Association of Naturopathic Physicians from 2013 to 2016. In addition, she was also recognized as the 2018 Doctor of the Year for her contributions to the practice of naturopathic medicine in California. The board welcomes Dr. Tice to the CBNM and looks forward to her serving many years with us. Staff is currently working with DCA and the Governor's Appointment Office to get the last 2 positions filled, and we hope to get that done soon. Staffing update. During the 2022 Oversight Sunset Review process, the board provided information to the legislature about the ongoing issues with unlicensed practice. Assembly Bill 2685, statutes of 2022 was the sunset bill that changed the committee to the California Board of Naturopathic Medicine, along with providing authority to hire an additional staff member to assist with the large unlicensed activity. Board staff developed a duty statement for the new Consumer Protection Service Analyst position as a full-time permanent position. The recruitment process occurred in late December 2023. On February 5th, 2024, Ms. Florencia Francisco, who is here with us today, joined the CBNM staff as the new Consumer Protection Services Analyst. Ms. Francisco worked for other boards under the Department of Consumer Affairs and brings with her several years of enforcement and complaint resolution experience. She received multiple awards from the California Contractor State Licensing Board for processing and closing the most cases. Ms. Raquel Oden, who has been with our board for 10 years and provided both licensing and enforcement services during that time, with her position. With the new creation of the new Consumer Protection Services Analyst, Ms. Oden has taken on the duties of the executive officer's backup for administrative duties, including being another resource for our board members. And Ms. Oden will continue to perform licensing and credentialing roles for the board. And enforcement case types. Although the case types were not broken down for today's meeting, the board still identifies the following violations as follows.
Unlicensed activity consists of using naturopathic doctor title, which is a violation of code Business and Professions Code 3660, not providing a written disclaimer of unlicensed practice to their client, and having a signed copy by the client on file per California Business and Professions Section 2053.6 and California Business and Professions Code Section 3644, providing diagnosis in violation of California Business and Professions Code Section 2053.5, advising their clients to discontinue medication prescribed by licensed healthcare providers, also prohibited with California BPC Section 2053.5. Providing treatment within the scope of an ND without a benefit of a license, violation of Code Business and Profession Code 3644, and causing harm or death to clients, California Business Profession Code 3644. Violation types that make up enforcement cases against our licensees and applicants are separated into several violation categories. Those are advertising violations, failure to update address with the board, substance abuse related violations, unprofessional conduct, records only, not releasing upon a patient's request, and patient harm. Any questions so far? I know I'm going pretty fast, so I apologize. Okay. All right, and board member training, I know that that the board executive DCA's board update kind of went on this today, but the members should have completed their EEO policy, the board member orientation training, defensive driving training, ethics, sexual harassment prevention, and information security. Any questions? So if you take a look at your 6B item, you'll notice that the California Board of Naturopathic Medicine, the licensing performance measures for the fiscal year 23-24 quarter 2, we received, let me break this down. So in October, our cycle time to complete an application is 45 days. We had one application come in, one completed application came in. Cycle time was 9 days to complete that. There were 19 that came in that did not have everything in it when they first came in. And when they did finally come in, it only took 2 days to complete those. For November, same thing. We had one that came in for November. The cycle time on that was 1 day. Then there was 8 that came in with deficiencies, and the cycle time for that was 10 days. There were none that were received in December that were all complete, but there were 5 that came in that were deficient, and those took 11 days to complete for our staff. Was there any questions in these?
What is the reason why they're coming incomplete?
So they'll send in, they might send in their application, but their fingerprints haven't been cleared through DOJ. We may be waiting for another state to send a verification of license, or, you know.
So it varies, it's not one same thing, okay, okay.
So basically, those are the stats there. The initial license fee step 2, basically that's once we tell them that the application has been approved, and they have to just go online and update their public information and pay the license fee. That takes, anywhere from a couple of days. And basically what happens there is once they open it on their end, they pay it, and when they pay it, it closes. So whatever those timelines are, it's just because that applicant is taking their sweet time to pay it online. The renewals in October, we had 45 come in. It took 2 days. In November, there was 59 that came in. It took 4 days for cycle times there. And in December, there were 40 that came in, and the average cycle time was 2 days to process those. Are there any questions? I'm so sorry I rushed through these.
Good job on that turnaround time.
Again, excellent customer service. We try. All right. So basically, I also provided the performance measures for the enforcement. And basically what happens is I broke it down to where the performance measures won and what those definitions entailed. And I know you guys have that and you've kind of read over this. Were there any questions on these? Just want to make sure we get out of here on time. So,
question which I hope will be quick, but so like in December on that one, the total volume of PM1 complaints was 4, and then the total volume in PM2, which is the number of complaints closed, is 6. Is that because some were carried over from the previous months?
Correct, yes. And if I run it now, I'm sure there's going to be tons more closed because now that we've got Florencia, we've been able to handle them a lot more. All right. Were there any questions on that? That concludes my update for you guys.
All right, I don't see any questions or any public members here. Moderator, can you open for public comment online?
We are open for public comment online. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. For our mobile device users, if you're having trouble finding that hand button, tap the ellipses button, the ... at the bottom, to choose the appropriate page to find your hand button. We're going to give everyone just a couple of seconds to make their request before moving forward. Seeing no request, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, thank you. So the next agenda item is agenda item number 10, which is the update on FNMRA, which is the Federation of Naturopathic Medical Regulatory Authority, having to do with the Idaho licensure of other healthcare practitioners as naturopathic doctors.
Great, thank you. So I just wanted to give a brief update. I know that I spoke in length about this during our last meeting, but I just wanted to kind of bring some information back to you guys. So the background of naturopathic medicine in Idaho. Idaho has an existing board that licenses naturopathic doctors as naturopathic medical doctors. So NMD is the title that they use there. The state of Idaho has created through legislation a board that would license naturopathic doctors. However, the NDs of the new board would be one of 6 healing art practitioners, MD, DO, chiropractors, podiatrists, dentists, acupuncturists, that are licensed under another medical profession that choose to become an ND. These individuals would simply use the respective active license and a licensing examination administered by this new board. And they would also take a continuing education level 160 to 180 hour naturopathy course to meet this requirement. In addition, the new board will register traditional naturopaths, lay naturopaths. So the Idaho chapter of the American Association of Naturopathic Physicians, AANP, requested E.O. Mitchell to provide testimony and consultation to the Idaho Department of Professional Licensing. And that was several months ago. But however, in May of this year, in March of this year, the new board is trying to create a minimal naturopathy course through the Kansas State University. Since Kansas State is a naturopathic medicine regulatory state, there is a concern that the course does not meet the educational requirements for an ND licensure in Kansas. As this develops, there will be additional information provided in subsequent meetings. But I did want to bring this to you because, again, with the Military Portability Licensing Act that we have in place here, it gives us concern and a reason to pause, so that we're supposed to allow other professionals to come into our state that are military members or spouse of a military member. Unfortunately, we now have to really look at who is really a naturopathic doctor that is equivalent to our naturopathic doctor here in California. The Idaho ND will not meet that. They will not be able to come over here and use that ND license to practice, and we will have to tell them that they cannot do so. So this is just a concern for us. As I also sit as the president of the FNMRA, so it is comprised of all of the regulatory boards that support the naturopathic medicine and licensed naturopathic doctors. And we see this as a very big concern because consumers are now just, there was this, lay naturopaths and then naturopathic doctors. Now there's this whole new level of naturopathic doctor who really does not meet that requirement. And even in addition to that, we are a little concerned that a drugless practitioner can go take a 160-hour course and then become a naturopathic doctor who then in turn has prescribing rights and minor office procedures possibly. So that's just a concern. Idaho has not made any attempts to rectify any of these concerns that the regulatory boards have with this because it's a big consumer harm, So we just wanted to bring that to your guys' attention, and I will keep bringing it back to you as it goes forward. But we will be putting a statement on our website stating that NDs from Idaho will not be able to come over here using that federal law. Right, and that concludes my update with that. Are there any questions?
Right. There are no members of the public present here, so we're opening for public comment online.
We are open for public comment online. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button. For our mobile device users, please raise a hand. If you're having trouble finding your hand button, tap the ellipses button, the ... in order to find the appropriate page. We're going to give everyone just a few seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, thank you. The next item is agenda item number 11, discussion and possible action for prospective legislative proposals. We have one here about adding peptides to Business and Professions Code 3640.7. And there is a question of whether peptides are already included since amino acids are included in this Business and Professions Code. Is it something we need to vote on? What's the situation with this, Rebecca?
So this basically is just if this is a legislative proposal that is something that you guys want to look into, then we can you guys can make a motion and we can we can start looking into this. Or what you guys can do is say, yes, we want to look into this and we want to start doing a legislation proposal, reach out to, legislators and find somebody that will carry this for us. While I was doing the research, and I know that, I believe it was Dr. Singleton that had asked if peptides were in our statute, and I was looking, I'm like, well, it doesn't specifically mention peptides, but it does give you guys the amino acids within your scope. And when I started doing the research on that, I noticed that, I get it that it's a precursor. But I'm not a medical person. I don't deal with it. I don't pretend to. So that I think is something that's going to have to go back to you guys, whether a peptide is considered an amino acid, it's already covered in here. Now, if you think that is something that needs to be clarified more in regulations, then we would have to make some type of regulatory change in there somewhere. So this is something that I think you guys would need to discuss and figure out, for one, if we even need to make this change, or if with that amino acids being in your guys' scope, if that covers the peptides that are able to be used, because not all peptides can be used unless they're being used for research, because there's only a couple that FDA has actually allowed for use of treatment, right? So I think that's one of those things that you guys as the board have to determine.
So my concern is that I think this is a discussion that we need to spend a little more time on, because I don't think we want to send it to regulation if it's something that we can simply agree is already covered. I don't feel like we have the time for that today. Right. Is it possible to put that on a future agenda where we actually have more time to discuss whether or not this is already covered in the scope? I feel like there's a lot of regulatory things that we need to do that obviously need to be changed. We need to discuss whether this one even needs to be added to regulation.
Are you saying it's to the board to decide if amino acids include peptides?
Right, correct,
Okay.
yes. And if we decide that it's already covered, we don't have to put it in regulation at that point. I mean, if everyone thinks that's obvious, we could just vote on it now, but if there needs to be more discussion, which seems like there might need to be, then we would need to do that at the time that we have for time.
I think it's obvious. We'll talk about it later, I guess. Okay. Yeah.
I don't know. Not in my
wheelhouse. Not my wheelhouse too, but as I was researching, I'm like, I mean, they really are an amino.
I also do think it's obvious, but so I also think we're really rushed right now.
Yeah.
So we can wait for it agenda. So, okay. So we'll put that off. Yes. I think that we're also gonna, I think that discussing the updating the board logo and color design actually might be a nice thing to include in the solid, but maybe not.
Yeah, no, we can do that.
It seems sort of incorporate into that whole idea. We did that already. What are we?
Yeah, so you guys, so basically, let me give you a little bit of historical background on this. So we were rushed into getting a logo. So remember, we actually just came up with the logo, but because we didn't have really time to go into all of the color palettes and all that type of thing, what we did was we used what was originally our original logo. We just used the same color palette and we just transferred that over to the new logo, right? So the brand was still there because it was still, the colors was still similar. So it was very recognizable still to us, which I thought was very good in branding because it still had the same colors. It was still identifiable as the same people that were the committee, now the board, right? So, but you guys had asked that we bring these color palettes. You guys chose this, I believe it was during the 2023, I believe in December, the first, maybe it was in August, but anyway, in 2023, you guys asked to see this palette here, and you wanted to see them side by side so you could see if maybe you wanted to change the color. So I will tell you that it is very time and resource intensive to change this, because if you do change the color, we have to go back and do all of our website. We have to go back and do all of our forms, and we have to make it ADA compliant. So it is very time intensive. So I just want to let you know, however, if you do choose to do this, that is perfectly fine. Just know that it will be an added time resource for the staff.
We need to ask for public comment on agenda item 11 since we sort of tabled it.
I think we can move on from that.
Yeah.
We're tabling 14 as well.
Yeah, we're tabling 14 as well. We're moving on to agenda item 15, which is future agenda items and next meeting dates. I would propose that Rebecca do the next meeting dates for the doodle poll, and we just ask for future agenda items that people want to see included. I think our peptides included in our scope already because they're amino acid is a future agenda item. Okay.
And the color logo. So I'll just add everything that was tabled today. I will add to the agenda items for the next meeting. And
perhaps I need help organizing this, but my proposal for a future discussion is a discussion examination of the existing budget with specific attention towards existing and potential revenue streams for the board, including but not limited to the naturopathic scope, practice,
and education. I don't know the best way to put that, but the intention, yeah, in understanding back to the question. So perfect. I'd like to request that. I come back.
Gotcha. Is the next meeting thinking of the strategic meeting?
It is. So I am going to be very right out front. Is that the next meeting, because it's an all-day meeting and it pretty much takes all day for a strategic plan. Those that you've already went through it, you know that. So we will open the meeting to usually do a minute approval, review and approval for this minute to the next one. We will do the nominations for board members for office, and then we'll go right into the strategic plan most likely. So we're not going to have a whole lot of time to put this on the June meeting, but what we could do is if you guys feel very strongly about it, we can have another meeting sometime after that. But just remember that meetings are now costing us. So just be very mindful about that, especially since we're talking about raising fees and being insolvent. So we really want to make sure that we're mindful about that. So I will have those all three of those items on our future agenda, and we will make sure that they're brought to you guys.
Does anyone have any questions or comments on that? Moderator, there are no public members present. Any questions or comments from the public online regarding future agenda items?
All right, then we will take future agenda items online.
And this is number 15, FYI.
If you'd like to make a comment on future agenda items, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button. For our mobile device users, if you're having trouble finding that hand button, click the ellipses button, the ... to find the appropriate page. We're going to give everyone just a few seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, thank you. At this point, I am adjourning the Thursday, March 28th, 2024 meeting of the California Board of Naturopathic Medicine. It is 3:07 p.m. Thank you.